Hello, good morning. Oh man, there's another there's a tier 1 sub that I just found from while I was offline. Thank you so much. Not exactly. Seems like I missed you 20 hours ago. Wow, this is cool. I'm glad that you guys are appreciating this enough to throw subs at this. I'm really stoked to be streaming here daily. And I'm about to get started on my daily sketch. I have a feeling there's probably some buds from the channel that are going to be popping in here. I'm gonna send out a little I gotta figure out a way to send out a notification on the Discord to people who are interested hearing through that. Let's see. Feel free to give a shout out if you are in the chat. The one thing I can't see through my OBS is how many people are in the room. Let me just pop over here real quick.
Was the guy from Divergent? You know the yeah.
Hey, I'm going live on Twitch, and if anybody wants to join me, just pop it in and say
what's
hey.
your Twitch? Let me follow your Twitch.
Okay. Now it's no longer going to be lonely, I think. All right. So, I got my photo study for today. Another Pinterest photo I pulled off of the internet. Let's see. Pinterest photo I pulled off of Pinterest. Kicking things off, I'm going to start with a little bit of light ground. I got my texture brush here. Gives me a slightly inconsistent coverage, which is exactly what I want. That way I feel like, I don't have too clean of a surface that I'm going to be able to screw up. Yo, Fijodo, how's it going, man? Good morning, good morning. Sketching right now? Yep. Good time to do it, I think. Oh boy. Trying to do too much there with one big stroke. Yeah, I'm getting started on my daily study. It's been great to get back into these things. I feel like I still learn from every single one of them I do, so I'm really stoked to see like how far this all goes. Because I'm day by day feeling just like a little stronger every single time I do one of these things. So I am currently hanging out on Discord. Hey Jazz, thanks for joining me. You're muted though right now. If anybody wants to join me on Discord to post their own studies, to hang out with me in voice chat, I'm going to be here in the voice chat, and you can come and voice chat with me while I'm streaming, and you'll be on the stream too. I think. Let's see. Let me check to see what the live on Twitch permissions are here. I think it's like, yeah, anybody can connect, but you need to have special permissions to be able to speak, which I can give to anybody who pops in who wants to chit chat. Welcome, Adverse Spirit. Learning this whole calling people out on Twitch, say hey thing. Yeah, this is me. This is the self-portrait here. I'm the owl. Hey, how's it going, Pill? You know what I keep forgetting to do every single time I go live recently is I keep forgetting to raid after I'm over. So please help me remind me around 2 o'clock to make sure to plan out who I'm going to raid. I got to figure this thing out. I got to start getting all the the ways of the Twitch streamer organized. Figure out how this is all done. Oh yeah, yeah. It's about 5 years since the last time I took a swing at this, but I've got affiliate now, and I wanted to give it another shot. I was streaming every single day for the last few months on Discord, which is just like not a super efficient way of getting out to the people, because you have to kind of sign up for the server and be on there in order to like see that I'm going live. And so I decided to switch it back over to Twitch, kind of combined with Discord. So the Discord server is active, and people can come in there and hang out and chit chat with me while I'm working. And then I've also going to be broadcasting the whole thing out live to Twitch at the same time. It's a bit of a new arrangement. I always wonder what this looks like to other people. Like, I've got these block-ins that are always so loose and so weird. And by the end of it, like, everything is going to look pretty realistic. And it only takes about an hour or so to come together. But in my mind, it feels like it's like nothing, 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 and then all at once it kind of all comes together at the end. And I wonder if, like, people see it that way, or, like, what it looks like I'm in the middle of when I'm just starting these beginning stages, because it doesn't really look like much, and a lot of the changes I'm making seem pretty insubstantial. But the thing I'm focused on at the moment is I'm trying to make sure that I have all the landmarks correct as they need to be, so that, like, the proportions on the girl are good, and that if I'm going to be basing like where the shoulder is based off of where the back of the owl's head is, I better get the owl in the right spot, because otherwise, like, I can end up with this kind of chain reaction where if I'm judging like the height of one thing, like right now she's got this one shoulder is like lower on the left than it is on the right, but I've got that reversed. So if I were to be basing stuff off the height of this kind of little shelf over here, I'm going to end up completely in the wrong spot. So I need to make sure that I've got these broad strokes like knocked in like a really accurate way, because I'm going to be building everything else on top of them. This is one of the things that I'm historically pretty bad at, is like judging these things and getting them pretty correct early on. And then like I'm pretty confident in my ability to like refine stuff later, but this beginning part, if you get it out of whack, you end up in real trouble. Like, legal trouble. Like, you can be arrested in the United States for getting this wrong. So, I'm always trying to make sure that I got this. But it doesn't really look like progress. I'm not sure it looks like progress. I don't know what it looks like. My eyes are moving around this canvas in a very particular way, and I don't know how other people are looking at it. One of my concerns over this is like, I keep thinking that like I got better at figuring out how to size the canvas the same as the proportions for the reference, and that's potentially made it like a lot easier for me to be able to get these things right, because I can just look left to right and see if they line up because they're the exact same size. And it's not that I've actually gotten that much better, it's that I've just gotten slightly better at cheating. But I'll take it. Terrible House. Good name. How's it going? What makes you decide the opacity when drawing in different layers until the finished piece? I mean, the layers for me are typically about 100%, unless it's a blending mode where I will move it up and down until I find a spot that I like. But all the layers that I'm going to be working on are likely going to be at 100% the whole time. Let's see. But the opacity-wise, I mean, I've also got the opacity on the brush, which is its own thing. And I don't really think about the specific numbers so much because the way I'm doing it is, if you see on the camera, I'm using the number keys across the top row to go more opaque and then less opaque. And so I've just kind of got this scale, like a touch bar. So I can know that if I go to the left, it's going to get like a little bit more transparent. Well, if I move a little bit to the right, I'm going to end up more opaque. And so it's more of a matter of touch than it is a matter of like academically knowing what the opacity is going to be. And I don't really, I mean, it's become muscle memory at this point, so I don't really think about it. There's other ways of adjusting the opacity. I think there's at least 3, maybe 4, or even 5 ways of changing the opacity on a brush in Photoshop. I'm not sure. I haven't counted them all up, but I got used to the number key thing, and once it became muscle memory, I stopped getting curious about it, but I'm sure that other people have different ways of working it out. Hey, Jazz, is everyone in the room muted because they can't talk or because everyone is choosing to put their mic off? Let's see. I can see the chat. Oh, we're suppressed, it says. What the fuck? I was wondering why everyone was being so dang quiet this morning. Permissions. Everyone. Oh. I'm going to give you... Okay. I'm going to give you... Roll. I forgot. How about that? Can you activate it now? One more second. Permissions. Streaming room invite. Yeah. It should be able to do it now. Give it one more shot. I think I got it. I think. We'll see. Here, I'm gonna... Still nah. Streaming room invite roll. Okay. Permissions. Streaming room invite. Active. Everyone. I'm gonna say... Okay. Try now. I think I got it. Boom.
Yeah, I leave the room and come back.
Okay. Well, no, I had to change the setting too. I got the settings screwed up earlier.
Jazz, try leaving and then coming back. Yep.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, Fijoto, you're right. There is hotkeys to be able to like change the brush size and opacity based off of hotkeys. So like you can hold a hotkey and then swipe and then change the different parameters. So like that's a really popular way to do it. I'd say that's probably a really, really good habit to get into if you're just learning this stuff. My specific like muscle memory for hotkeys is like very specific to me and not something I think is like the correct way to do it in like, you know, in a general sense.
That owl in the reference is sweet looking.
Yeah, I mean, I love a good barn owl. I think there's a barn owl, right? Or no?
I have no idea. I'm not an owl scientist.
Dude, there are, but how many times have you been on Discord and there's somebody who's like a subject matter expert? You're like, oh, that's a barn owl. And they're like, you can hear them biting their tongue. And you're like, what's up? And they're like, That's a Western mousing owl. And you're like, oh, cool. Do you know about owls? They like go off for like 40 minutes. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, man, there's so many like interesting people in this Discord actually. Just like people who are, I don't know, like weird combinations of interests and like experiences and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, like when Sam pops in and he's just like, well, I can give you my opinion as a lawyer. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
I love Sam. He hasn't been around much. I wonder where he's at.
I mean, you say it hasn't been around much, but it's like, I've seen him around a couple of times since I've been back, and I've only been back like a few days, I feel like less than a week.
It's 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks?
Yeah. Or at least like a week.
I think it's been a week. I think it's been a week I've been back.
Okay. I believe you.
Because, I mean, I started doing studies as soon as I got back, and I think I've only done about 7 of these things since I got back.
Okay.
Now I'm, like, gauging my days in terms of the number of studies I've done.
If I just, randomly skedaddle, it's because, like, technically I'm at work. So, like...
Technically, huh?
Big Cheese comes in, I'm just gonna, like, leave.
They're like, are you just spending all day on Discord?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. No. Why would anyone do that? That would be crazy.
I don't know. I definitely do. I have a job that kind of allows me to do so. The chatting portion is the part I'm definitely, like, won't be able to do type of deal.
Well, I mean, even working for myself, I wonder sometimes if maybe my Discord chatting is, like, massively getting in the way of me doing my job. And as the boss, I actually need to think about that.
I would err on the side of yes.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think yeah, it's probably a problem actually.
I think there's probably like a point in which like doing your study here makes sense, like an hour and a half of your study.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But outside of that, man, I'm like, dude, you're here a lot for like a dude who's, filled to the brim with things that they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, like if my primary thing that I need to be doing is painting, I can, if I'm at like the render stage on a painting, and I can hang out and work on that. And so there's a chance that I'm going to be hanging out for a good chunk of over the next couple of days, just like chilling on the Discord and then rendering.
And there's like no problem also with just being like streaming on Twitch or Discord and having yourself like and everyone else muted. That's like a reasonable thing to do as well, because you don't always need to be chatting with people, and like you can learn a lot just by watching. So
So Terrible House is asking me like, what brush am I using? This is a default Photoshop brush. It's just that I took one of the textured brushes that has a little bit of the dual brush on it, and I changed it so that it had it had shape dynamics, so that the size jitter was attached to the pen pressure, which mimics the kind of the round brush that I typically use. Like it's Photoshop, it was a default brush for Photoshop CS6, so it's a brush that's been in Photoshop for at least 9 years, but I don't know like what the brushes look like as defaults for CC. I'm gonna have to I think tomorrow I'm gonna try to get CC installed and like work on the same version of Photoshop as a normal person instead of like my weird like outdated version that I'm attached to. And then I can play around with all the weird new stuff. I can see what all the features are like. And
Dude,
then
I don't know how you talk
complain
so
about
much while working. Like, I feel like I lose about 60 IQ points when I'm like trying to draw and talk at the same time.
It depends on what I'm talking about, and it depends on what I'm drawing. Like,
Yeah, it does depend a bit.
rendering, I can talk about just about anything. Like if somebody asks me a question about something that I like really care about the answer, I'll sometimes like have to like set the pen down and like give an answer, and then I can pick it back up. But just random chit chatting, like BSing, I can do most art tasks. it's hard for me to do concept art while I'm talking under any circumstances. But like the studies are pretty easy because I'm able to. I don't have to come up with ideas. I just need to go through the process.
Yeah, I was trying to do concept art while like chatting with people on Discord the other day, and like
yesterday, it was
you can move your hand and do it, but like the ideas get worse and worse.
Yeah, I have like there's an old episode of the podcast Radio Lab where they talked about how there was this experiment where they stuck somebody in a room that was like, or like a room, and they're like, okay, well, go and, follow these directions. Like, go face this wall and turn this direction. And it's just like really, really basic navigation stuff. And they could do it. And like, but then they put this setup. Or no, it was something like, I think it was that they had to like navigate a really, really simple maze. And it was like the kind of thing that like anyone with it was the kind of maze that anyone over the age of about 9, like anyone who's like old enough to crawl on the ground could navigate. So like, like a 16-month-old was able to like do this maze, right? Easily, really simple stuff. But then they stuck them in this rig where they had to both speak and listen to somebody speaking at the same time. So, like, they were listening to some headphones, and then on the headphones were, like, they had to, like, listen to the words that were being said and then repeat those words. So they had to be listening and speaking at the same time. So, like, their whole, like, vocal processing part of their brain was being completely distracted. And while that was going on, they completely lost, the adults would completely lose the ability to navigate even simple spaces. Like, even just orienting yourself became, like, impossible under those conditions. Like, this sort of theory that they're putting forward was that there's a certain amount about the way we use language that acts as an intermediary for a bunch of other stuff that we do. And, like, our ability to navigate, our ability to generate memories, like, there's all kinds of, like, basic brain stuff that potentially is all laundered through the kind of word portion of our brain. And so somebody who's fully nonverbal, like, can't do certain tasks because they just aren't, like, there's a certain amount of intermediary action that happens in our brain that, like, that's mediated by, like, our ability to speak and like form words and stuff. And so I was like, I wonder if that's the reason. I wonder if like it's just really brain consuming to do like concept art or like come up with visual ideas. And like when we're speaking or listening to speech, that's like taking up a certain amount of the bandwidth inside of our heads. And so I tried to as like a little bit of my own experiment, I tried to see what would happen like on days where I was having a hard time drawing, try to avoid podcasts and YouTube videos for like my second screen and just only be making art, listening to like non-lyrical music. And it was annoying because like I wanted to listen to something distracting while I was working. But I think I noticed that like when I had like a movie on or a podcast or something, that I just like couldn't draw new ideas. But when I like had a drawing already set to go, I was able to fairly easily like work on whatever. And that there might be something inside our brains that is just like there's a finite amount of bandwidth in a certain part of the brain, and there's like if you create cross traffic in there, you're just done.
I mean, I feel like speech is fairly imaginative, especially so when you're trying to think about what you're going to say, you're sacrificing one thing or another. So if you're focused on what you're trying to say, then, there's not a much imaginative processes left to actually do the concept, which is very imaginative. I think it's just like speech in general is imaginative. And, there's only so much bandwidth there. So I think it's almost as simple as that. But
I'm not sure it is simple. Like the cases I've heard for it is that it is that like what's happening when there's a lot of stuff that like you can't do without speaking. Like there's a lot of ideas that like only exist because we have words for them. And that like
because we're always trying to like match something to a word that we know.
yeah, but like that words end up being this kind of intermediary step to understanding that there we may actually be kind of intuitively undercounting the amount that like words account for like the ways in which we think. That we're thinking in a very verbal way at times and we don't even realize it.
Do you think that's why, like, I know I do my best work like from a creative perspective in general when I'm thinking the process out loud, like when I'm sitting down to paint and I'm trying to figure out what looks wrong. If I talk out loud and I really like almost speak to myself as if I'm giving, critique to a friend, then things start clicking really well. Do you think that's like maybe talking through the artistic process could potentially help artists get what they're thinking imaginatively onto paper?
Oh, maybe. I personally like part of my creative process is to do word association, and I always felt like, when I would speak out loud, like the sort of associations I had with a word, that I would get little flashes of imagery. That I've like always gotten little flashes of imagery with various different words, even foreign words that I didn't know the meanings to. And that like by relying on that, I was able to like make connections between concepts by using words as an intermediary like step. And I'm not the only one I've heard plenty of people independently talk about a process that's very similar to that.
Yeah, I think that's I feel pretty similarly about that. I think I really try to focus on what I enjoy about art is the emotion and story it tells while being just one frame of information. And so I try to break down what I'm seeing into how it makes me feel, or
Damn. I
what
just like cool boots.
Well, okay, so if I saw like that, it's funny you say that, because if I saw boots and they were worn, and then I'd try to attach it to the backstory of the character. Like, I do that with everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, to me, it just makes I'm just with Pete on this. I don't know. I try to attach images to words and words to images all the time.
That's right.
I
You
tried
better
doing that
be with
once.
me on this. What?
I did your make 5 princesses based on like different flavors of tea thing. And it made one of my favorite paintings. In fact, probably my favorite painting, the peppermint tea princess.
I did see it on your art station.
Yeah.
And it is really good.
Thanks. For whatever reason though, it's like my least successful like good painting that I've done. Like no matter where I put it, everyone hates it.
Like whatever. People are always going to disagree with you about like what their favorite painting is and what yours is. Like there are pieces of mine I think of being like just the worst, like just like not like the worst piece of art, but maybe like the bottom 5% of my entire portfolio. And then someone will email me and be like, "Oh my God, I've been checking back in every week for the last year to see if you're ever going to list this as a print. And I feel like I should finally just go ahead and ask, like, are you ever going to make that available?" And I'm like, holy shit, there's somebody in the world who like cares about this thing that like no one else in the world cares about, not even me. And I've had that happen a number of times. It's just like everyone wants something a little different. And in the moment when I'm making a painting, there's something there I'm trying to put in it genuinely. So like stands to reason that it should connect with someone if I'm creating authentically. But when then you look at the averages and it starts to get really weird because you're like, oh, this piece that's really good is performing like only 40% as well as this other piece that I'm not even that interested in.
I think you just said something fairly profound that you glossed over really quickly, which was if you if you're working, I forget the exact words, but if you're working honestly and
Yeah,
like
authentically.
authentically, then someone will like it.
Someone will
And
like
I-
it,
and that's
theoretically.
a really well, like it's more than that because this brings up kind of the whole thing with why AI art might not be so exciting.
Yeah.
And it's because there was nothing behind it, you know?
Right. There wasn't an idea there, which is really the struggle. Like, if somebody's using AI as a tool to like get their
Sure.
idea out, like what they'll find almost instantly is they can get a version of the idea, but not like the actual idea.
Yep.
And then they'll discover that that actually the version that they got is actually really, really similar to other prompts that are kind of unrelated that somebody else put in. And so they're not getting something that's like in their own voice or like visually unique. It's like not only are they not getting like a authentic expression of their idea, but they're also like it also looks really similar to a lot of other people who are using the same tools. Like, and it's very difficult to make unique looking thing. Like those two problems combined of like not having the intention behind the work, and then not creating a unique visual from it, like combined makes it like it doesn't matter how high fidelity it is. It makes it really difficult to get people to care.
Yep. I agree. And I think that's really maybe a really important point for people feeling stressed out about it, that, you know.
I would like people to feel less stressed out about it, but I've sort of given up on the hope of being able to like coax people out of the fears that they have. Like, and I certainly don't want to just tell people, oh, you're being irrational and crazy. Like that's it's not a very helpful attitude, and so I don't want to feel like I'm pushing that either.
The AI
Makes
art
you feel
part-
any better? Sorry, you say your thing first.
The AI art thing aside, it's just like the point is that people should definitely just keep working, and even if you're bad or you're new like me, that like people appreciate hard work, and that's just important for people to remember. So.
Well, welcome back, Joby. Sorry that Twitch forced you to unfollow me. I didn't know that such a thing was possible. But welcome back.
If it makes you feel any better, Pete, you definitely played a role in easing my fears.
Well, that's good. That's good because it's like, you know, I talked with Leah about it, and the end of the conversation was she was like, I know that they don't have my data, but I want to like I need to tell them not to anyway. And then I was like, okay, well, you know, good luck. She's like, show me how to do it. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't work for them. And then like she disappeared and hasn't been back since.
Yep.
And I'm like,
I was wondering about that.
I was like, you know, like I can't fix the feelings you have about a thing. And like, you know, you could definitely like get out of the Midjourney training data if you were in it, but you're not. Like, and you know, there's nothing. It's like if there's a problem that arises that like, you know, you can't do anything about. Well, it's like, oh, I want to be not in this training data. It's like, well, you're not. It's like, yeah, but I want to like feel like I'm not. Okay. You can't, like, that's not a thing that anyone can help with. Like I remember I had a conversation with somebody years and years ago, back at my old job. I worked with this one person who, you know, hadn't worked in the entertainment industry very much. Really talented, but like didn't really have much of a presence online. Like they got hired because they were attached to the fashion industry, and they were trying to get fashion industry people involved in like the character design for the project I was on. And they're like, so like, what do you do about, you know, they're like, do you think I should post my work on the internet? And I was like, yeah, obviously. This was like 2000. Probably like 2012, 2013, something like that. No, probably even earlier than that. Probably like 2008. I was like, yeah, you should post your work on the internet. Yeah. And then they're like, but what if somebody steals it? And I'm like, well, you know, somebody can download it without your permission, but like the right people can download it without your permission and the wrong people can. And it's like, that's the game. Like, if you don't allow yourself to be in a position of vulnerability like that, no one is ever going to know you even exist. And they're like, yeah, but what if somebody steals it? I'm like, I got nothing. Like, I can't tell you that you aren't going to be harmed or feel bad in the future based off of something that hasn't yet happened. Like, that's not a problem I can provide a solution to. And I think about that kind of, because like I know that this wasn't the only person who's ever had those feelings about posting their work on the internet before, and certainly not since. But I feel like we've kind of like collectively come back to that time now where there's like, I've just seen a lot of people, like Jake was sending me a link to somebody who had a big viral post on X.com saying, "Oh, Elon Musk, I'm no longer posting here because Elon Musk is stealing all of our data." I'm like, it's social media. Like, Twitter was stealing your data too. Like, they're all, like, Mark Zuckerberg's stealing all your data. Like, LinkedIn is stealing all your data. They're all stealing our data. That's like what social media is. Like,
has like most of the globe not caught on to the fact that if you talk about bikes and you open up Facebook, all of a sudden there's bike ads? Like,
yeah, no, I mean, like, we're all like well aware of this, but now there's like a way of attaching like a greater fear to it. Like, they're not just stealing your data; they're training an AI with the data. You know, they're building Rocco's basilisk, and they're going to unleash it on you with your own data. And I just go like, I mean,
probably,
yeah, maybe that's, but
we
that's.
should probably move on from the AI article.
I really would have thought that all of this anxiety would culminate in sort of a push towards like kind of like union organization. I really think that like in light of all this stuff that like in light of like the strikes that are happening in Hollywood, that like artists would be greater motivated to like organize and like create some sort of collective action to be able to push back against these larger organizations that have historically taken advantage of artists. And instead of that, I've been just seeing a lot more people saying they're going to delete themselves off the internet and basically, I don't know, switch careers. I'm not exactly sure what the next step is. And I really wish that there was positive steps towards something that we could build towards rather than move away from. Because I think there really is like a roadmap for how we could build towards some really good stuff for artists long term. Not just the artists that are here now, but like the artists that come after us. And I would love to be a part of something like that.
Maybe when you've got a little less on your plate, you could.
I'll be a union organizer for an industry I don't work in.
Yep.
I've heard that suggestion before.
No way. Have you really? I was kind of like joking, but have you actually like gotten that suggestion before?
Well, I complain about, you know, the systemic treatment of artists in terms of employment. And so at some point someone's like, well, why don't you be the change you want to see in the world? And I'm like, well, number one, I don't work for anyone. I'm independent. And two, I already am running multiple businesses. So
Yep.
That makes it really tough for me. I would really like it if somebody who is either more familiar with union organizing or like works directly in these industries would, you know, start to build groundswell support so that we could all chip in and enjoy it.
The thing that I'm still kind of struggling with as far as like doubts and fears about AI is when I go on social media, I encounter a flood of people panicking about it, and I have unique psychological issues that make me especially prone to getting swept up in just kind of like emotional amygdala-based panicky thinking. And like, and what always happens to me is I feel like, oh damn, I should be doing something and contributing. So I like, well, I don't really have any money or like power or reach or anything. So the best I can do is like this post or whatever, which makes more stuff appear in my feed and makes me even more panicked.
Yeah.
So I've decided to stop doing that.
People love liking posts, I gotta tell you. Like, I'm seeing a lot of post liking around town.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, I just bring it up because like
no,
I feel
that's
like
interesting.
there is
I really wonder, like, why is everyone liking all these posts so much? Because they're not that likable. They're pretty doom and gloom. You know, it's a very pessimistic view of the world. It's not pushing towards any kind of empowerment. Why is everyone liking them so much? And I feel like you're creating a narrative that explains a lot of it. It's just like, yeah, the liking is like, if in a world where you can't make any other kind of impact, you can like a post. And
Yeah.
so I see these, I wonder how much people are making some of these posts because they want to feel like they're also being heard. And so, and they know that these posts get a lot of likes. And so they keep hitting that button over again. And then it's creating this kind of like cycle where people are constantly, posting because they want to feel heard, liking because they don't know what they can do about it. And it's like they're creating this very, very noisy echo chamber of people who are, all feeling disempowered and frustrated. And there's not really any progress getting made because liking posts is not making a material difference,
Yeah.
which isn't an argument against, speaking on an important topic. But boy, there's something insidious about social media that really gets to me sometimes, about how it like makes us feel disempowered, but also it feels like it's pushing us away from the things we can do to make those situations better.
Yeah. I bring it up because I don't know. I feel like this must be the case for most artists. I'm just in a situation where like, well, I gotta do cardio, I gotta lift weights, I gotta eat, I gotta sleep, I gotta shower, and I gotta achieve all these art goals and things like that, and I gotta run my D&D campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And right, like I don't have a ton of time in the day to like devote to like union organizing or anything like that. So I feel
also,
like,
you don't have a professional job. Like you also don't work in the entertainment industry. You're like a guy on DeviantArt.
yeah. But like whatever I could do, like I just don't really have the time or resources to like contribute meaningfully. And I feel like a lot of even pro artists must be in a similar situation.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
I mean, like, how is like Dave Raposa gonna do anything about like, I don't know, like, or like?
Do you think Dave Raposa's
he's
next big move is that he's going to turn activist? You think he's going to become the Hassan of artists? That would be fucking cool. I'd support that.
It would be cool. I don't see it happening though.
He's going to have
like,
to put on some weight, I think, if he's going to become the Hassan of artists.
Yeah, he's just too busy.
Yep. He's going to have to do a lot more lifting.
Apparently, Dave used to be like jacked. That's what his wife says.
Dave's. I've never seen him be particularly like he's not a particularly big guy. He's not. He doesn't have a big frame. And I've never seen him. My image in my head is never him being particularly like fit. Like he's always been. He's not out of shape. He's just not a particularly muscular person. At least at the time I've ever met him. But
yeah, and I don't know how jacked is. Like that's a somewhat subjective.
And also, I mean, she likes him quite a bit. So her version of saying he was really jacked at one point, it might have just.
Oh, that Dave. He's so dreamy.
Yeah. I mean, she does like him quite a bit. Could influence the way that she sees him. Also, I don't know. Maybe he was like. Maybe I just didn't notice like that. Dave Raposa was super jacked at one point. That'd be funny. It would be really if he just showed up like full on Ryan Reynolds style one day, just like came in to the room and he was just like this like towering muscle man. He's probably been in better shape than me his whole life. I'm not trying to sound like I'm digging on him or anything. I've never been in good shape.
You look like you lift. You've got big traps.
Me? No, that's just fat near my neck. I've lifted weights a couple of times, but I've never made it more than a 6-month habit at any point. And I'm just tall. I've got a tall. I'm 6'2". I've got a large enough frame where if I were to actually dedicate myself to it, I would look like a muscular person probably. But my lifestyle has never led that direction. So I keep thinking like, one of these days, it's like if I get like that big crypto bag or whatever, I'm immediately going and getting a like I'm immediately going to get that like personal trainer and just doing like the billionaire like heel turn, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk did, where it's just like, fuck it, I'm rich, I'm gonna go get yoked. I would absolutely do that.
I don't know. I hate to burst your bubble, but like, I actually don't understand why people get personal trainers. Like, it seems pointless to me. Although then again, I'm somebody who has more time than they have money. So like,
well, I haven't had a lot of experience with lifting, so like if I wanted to do like if I wanted to regularly do deadlifts with like like a barbell, I would probably need to get my form right so I don't injure myself. And like, there's a lot of basic exercises where I don't know the form well enough to definitely not injure myself. And I did hurt myself. Like, the reason I stopped lifting the time where I had the longest streak going was because I was trying to do a bench press on a machine, and I was like twisting my body around trying to get the rep finished, and I ended up pulling a muscle in my shoulder. And it I'm old enough where it stayed uncomfortable for about 3 years afterwards.
Oh, wow.
So, I think it's better now, but it was like years where I just would feel it if I slept on it.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, yeah, if I'm going to go and like actually try to like push my limits, I should do so in a way where I'm not likely to cause myself life-changing injuries. And so I'm like, oh, I'll get a personal trainer. Or just take it easy. I mean, that's the other option.
If you just want to have like huge muscles, there's actually no reason to like do high risk lifts like deadlifts.
I don't really care about having huge muscles. I'm turning 40 this year, and a huge amount of it is just like maintenance. Like if I don't start doing something, I'm going to start losing mobility. I'm going to start entering into elderliness year by year.
Yeah.
Not by the time I'm like 42, but I'm just like, losing stamina, losing mobility, just like progressively losing my ability to move through the world. And so I need to start like ensuring that I've got like an extra decade or two of like comfortable mobility, and that is going to require work.
Okay. You actually don't need to do deadlifts for that either.
Yeah.
That's a very good pure motivation.
Plus vanity. The two align very well.
Yeah, they do. Like, I'll admit, I kind of got into like lifting for like partly vain reasons at first. But one of the things that like keeps me going when I like don't feel like dieting and lifting these days, it's not so much like, keeping my six-pack or whatever. It's like seeing my dad, who's like not in the best shape, kind of like going downhill and being like, okay, I do not want that.
That's been my motivation for trying to make smart business moves, is meeting a bunch of artists in their 60s who still take freelance gigs and going like, I am not going to do that. I will not be that guy.
Damn. Yeah.
So just for the audience here, I'm getting to the color stage now. So the reason why I'm switching to color is because I've got most of like the major landmarks set out. My pattern of values is largely there. It's like loose, rough version of what I was like aspiring to make. And so I'm bringing in a gradient map now, which is the way I do it, but not a way I would necessarily recommend people give it a try to. And I've got a gradient map here. It's set to soft light, which lays the colors over the canvas in a way that like blends them down into the values in a way that feels pretty soft and natural. I've got a bunch of pre-made color palettes here. The thing this one's pretty good too. The thing I'm really trying to do is like I'm looking at the reference image and I'm looking at the temperature separations. This one might actually be even better. Like notice how like on the hood here, like we see like cooler, more neutral tones where this like light is sort of bleeding over the edge, and then it gets warmer as we get through into like this this area here. We're getting similar results in these areas where you can see like, you know, this area is starting to go cooler. This area is going warmer. That's exactly what we're seeing here. Same thing on the face. We're seeing some like nice saturated midtones through the lower part of the face here. We're getting that here with like it blown out a little bit more on top. And then going into the shadows, it's cooling off. Like, I'm seeing some of these same temperature differences happening between both of them, and that's like, to me, that's important as like this one could be pretty good because where I'm getting these like highlights across the top, I'm going warm and then it's going cooler in the shadows. Same thing across the leg here. I'm getting a nice sprinkling of them together on the owl, which is going to work out really well. And then, you know, the face, where I'm getting a lot of light, it's cooling things off a lot, and then it's getting a little bit more warm in the shadows, and I'm starting to get those oranges in there. So, like, something like this, it helps establish, like, these temperature changes really early on. And they don't need to be super precise, but they do give me a general outline of where I'm going. And the same could even be true of something like this, or I can turn it inside out. If it's giving me like a good pattern of like warm and cool colors between like where the light is hitting and where there's shadows, then I can build off of that, and this layer is going to help establish kind of a baseline. Like even at 100% with this one's got some gaps where it's not adding color everywhere, which is a little nice. I think that's the reason I end up using it so much. I'm going to see what happens if I bring the reds up into the blacks a little bit more. It's a little too much. All right. And then over the top of this, I've got two options. I can either, I want to add some glazes to bring in colors across the rest of the composition, and that can either be done using normal mode. It can be done using multiply. It can be done using hard light. Hard light is my default. Though I've found it's actually kind of a weird choice. I guess people don't use that quite so much. I've played around with a few different options. The last study I was doing, I was pretty happy with it overall, and I thought it looked decent just with the glazing, just using normal. I wonder, like, because one of the things that it does when I start glazing using normal is it like brings down my shadows and brings up my shadows and brings down my highlights, and like softens and flattens things a little bit, which is an interesting little, like it adds a sort of softness to the shading that I like. I kind of like, because this is what it looks like normal, and then with hard light, it wraps into the values a little bit more. So like the shadows stay darker and the highlights stay lighter. But this is kind of like smoothing it all out and normalizing a little bit, which if I'm doing that in just select areas might actually be a pretty good look. So like if I'm, say, treating this background color as a reflected light, and then glazing a little bit over the top of the owl, I'm able to blend the foreground and background together in a way that's kind of nice, and then I'm also smoothing out some of these like bumps in the value pattern on the owl, neutralizing it a little bit, which I think looks pretty cool. And then I can go and bring up some of these highlights again if I wanted to like bring out a specular out of this. It'd be pretty easy to do. Yeah, it doesn't even really require anything fancy to add colors to black and white, I think. Like, I've always done hard light and like gradient maps and stuff, but the more I've been messing with these studies, the more I'm convinced that it might be possible to do entirely just with glazes of like normal mode, if it's done in kind of a smart way.
Is that still your 10% flow rush?
What's that?
Is that still your 10% flow brush?
Yes, I've just turned the opacity down to like 30%.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, like especially bringing in like this reflected light from the background color into the figure to sort of blend it in a little bit. Like the normal blending mode seems to work really, really well for that. And then if I wanted to have this kind of washed out highlight that where like the, we've got the sunlight that's this overcast day, casting on the face here, can take this sort of desaturated color and glaze it just maybe 10%, give it a little bit of, pull it out of those oranges a little bit, tie it into the background color a little. And like, because it's an overcast day, we have this very soft look, which is kind of why I like doing it with the normal mode here. But, we could dump out and escape back to hard light at any point if I really wanted to. But just, it's interesting, because you can see even without the gradient map is definitely adding some let's zoom in and take a closer look. It's giving us like a more diverse range of colors, especially in the shadows. You can see that these blues start popping through in a really distinct way. So I don't know if I would ever want to lose that. It would be a lot more tedious to try to bring in that extra color variation doing just like glazes. So it's really convenient to feel like I'm getting something out of that. But yeah, I'm going to try to push forward with just normal mode glazing and see how far I can get with this. I'm going to go for a little bit more of an extreme color to see if to make sure that it doesn't end up being too washed out looking. I want to only add a little bit of color to this and still kind of get it where I want it to be. So using a more extreme tone should help with that. That sort of thing works really, really well with traditional paint, less so with Photoshop. Like this process would work really well with real natural pigment because like the pigment flakes are going to spread out over the surface. And, they're not going to lose their saturation. They're just going to become more and more transparent, but they're going to retain that level of saturation, just spread out over a larger area. But with Photoshop, it's actually calculating the difference between the pixels that are there and the pixels and like the color that's inside, the brush, and it's giving me this kind of average of the two, which is like, making it less saturated. I think Jay has had to mute his mic, hide from his boss, showing up in Twitch chat.
I just wanted to say one more thing.
Yeah.
About like the fitness stuff.
Yeah.
If you're interested, feel free to be like.
Totally.
Yeah,
Let's get off of whatever I was just talking about.
All right. If your goal is just to like stay mobile and stuff, also feel free to stop me if I'm like telling you something you already know. I don't know.
You're also live on Twitch, so who knows who out there is gonna like appreciate it.
Oh yeah, that's true. All right, Twitch people. There's been a pretty substantial amount of research done on muscle loss, basically.
Mm-hmm.
How much physical activity do you need to avoid losing muscle? And it's not that much. Like if you take like bodybuilders and it's sort of like, how do I put this exactly? If you like put someone in a coma for a week, they will lose like almost all of their muscle mass over the course of like a week or two. It's crazy.
Wow.
If you take that same person and you have them just do normal day-to-day activities, right? They like get up out of bed and walk around,
stream on
take a shower
Twitch,
and that kind of thing.
hang out on Discord.
Yeah.
Normal daily activities.
It takes much longer to see people like start to lose muscle. It's like over a month, I think. I'm kind of going off of memory here, but it's quite a bit longer.
Mhm.
So you can take like long breaks from training and like not lose much, especially if you're not dieting. Um, yeah. Yeah. The point is just that like if you're just trying to like not lose mobility, the amount of exercise that takes is like not as much as you think.
Yeah.
Like you're thinking like, oh, I need to do deadlifts in order to like not be crippled
But
when I'm, like an old
also,
man or whatever.
I want to not be crippled, but I also want to be vain.
Okay. Yeah, so like the people who tend to like live the longest in the world and like maintain a good quality of life and whatever, they're not like bodybuilders usually. Although bodybuilders tend to have or not as long as they don't take steroids anyway. Bodybuilders tend to like live pretty like natural bodybuilders tend to live pretty long and have pretty good quality of life. But like the longest people with the best quality of life are just like normal people who eat like a pretty well-rounded diet and they don't stop like doing things like gardening and going for walks and things of that nature.
Yeah.
You know, it's people on like weird, you know, villager islands and stuff like that who live to be like 100.
Peasant lifestyles.
Yeah.
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 And if you want to be vain, like the best way to just like get bigger muscles is actually to do like lighter lifts with like more volume.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like really the only reason to do deadlifts is if you care about strength and like competing in like strength events and that kind of thing. The risk is just not worth the reward for literally anyone else.
Huh. Yeah, I always thought of them as being like one of these essential exercises because it's got, you know, multiple joints and, you know, it's like working, you know, the lower part of your core and like your back and stuff. Like, just because, I mean, if I was, I'm not really that interested in having like big arms or whatever, but I would like to have a strong core, which, you know, translates into a lot of mobility and like, you know, the ability to kind of drag myself around or do other stuff. Like, having a strong core would be nice. Strong back.
Oh.
I've never been able to do a pull-up.
Okay, yeah.
Like, I don't have
I
like
actually-
insane aspirations, but I have always wanted to be able to do a pull-up.
You know what I do? I've actually never done a pull-up either.
Really?
Despite being in incredible shape, and it's not because I can't do one. I probably can. It's just I have limited equipment and limited funds.
Huh.
So like what I've done is I just like draped 2 bed sheets with like knots tied in them over a door.
Yeah.
Close the door, and then I like hang off the bed sheets to do pull-ups, but my feet are still touching the ground. So
Huh.
I just take my legs out of the lift.
Oh, okay.
And like do these kind of weird makeshift pull-ups, and my back's like pretty good looking. And I assume I can do a pull-up. I just don't have like a pull-up station or anything.
Huh.
So like I recommend that for people who are like trying to get into doing pull-ups. Just set up a station of some kind where like your feet are touching the ground and you can like assist as much as you need to.
Interesting.
But like put your back into it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
put your back into it.
There's also
Hey,
I
Rock
don't know, there's
Susie.
people who have gotten into amazing shape just with like a jungle gym at their local park or whatever. I'm pretty sure I saw a video of like a ripped homeless guy who literally just like does stuff at like like this is why I like don't like personal trainers just seem a bit pointless to me. Is it's like getting in shape is kind of like art where like all you need is like some printer paper and a mechanical pencil or whatever. Like
Yeah.
especially if you don't have high aspirations. Like Jesus Christ. Like
Well, I know what I need is the same thing I need for art, which is consistency. And so
Yeah.
the idea would be to like learn the basics from, you know, make sure I'm not going to injure myself again, and have like a bit of a plan, and then figure out a path towards executing that on my own by
just need
having
like a Full
a
Metal
plan for
Jacket.
consistency.
I
Marine
would
drill
try-
sergeant.
I would try to start with just doing like 5 minutes of exercise per day or something. Like that's really all you kind of need to, especially develop like some sense of muscle mind connection.
Mhm.
Like a lot of exercises are just hard for beginners because beginners don't have developed that sense of connection between mind and muscle. And like you just gotta start and basically learn to understand your muscles better. And like that's so much of that is just getting used to it, and like that's where like really short workouts do help a lot.
Cool. A data point I forgot to mention about muscle loss that's like really interesting, and really puts into perspective just how little is actually required to like stay in shape. If you take like, like athletes, like people who are in really good shape and are concerned about muscle loss, right? Because it's easier to lose muscle like the more jacked you already are.
Yeah.
Yeah. The amount of volume, like training volume, they need to not lose any muscle at all ever, is a third of like their normal volume that they're doing for growth. So like that's like nothing. That's like
Yeah.
you show up and do like a couple sets for like each muscle group or whatever, and then you're like done for the week.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to wait until I get a huge crypto bag and get really rich and stuff. I was looking up the local YMCA, and I was like, oh, it won't work. They don't open till 9 a.m. and my plan was to try to get in there earlier before my day gets started, and then I discovered like, oh yeah, actually no, it's only on Sundays. So like I'd like ruled it out, and now it's like back in the mix again. So I'll probably end up getting. My plan is that once I'm like caught up on my shit, like I need to get. I'm overdue on my painting right now, and once that's delivered and I get like unburied from like my task list and my email and my painting backlog that I still have from vacation from like over a week ago, I'm gonna start trying to see if I can fold in trips to the local Y, so 10-minute bike ride away to go and just do some sets by myself, like somewhere around 7 a.m. every morning, because I'm up at that time anyway. This is not like I'm going to be a wake up and rise and grind at 5 a.m. sort of dude. I'm like already up at like 6 or 7 on most days, just on my own. And so instead of like sitting around at home on my phone waiting for everybody else to wake up, I'm just going to like go to the Y and go put in a few sets. And if I can make that a daily habit, I think it'll probably turn out pretty good.
The employees there probably can also like help you with basic stuff. Like you don't really necessarily need like a real serious personal trainer in that sense.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just thinking it would be, if I did get really rich, it would, as like far as like difficult, interesting projects to take on, getting absolutely jacked just to like make other people like feel like they're pieces of shit for not doing it. If I can pull it off, that's the next goal. Just to like get fit for the purpose of spite.
For me, honestly, like getting fit is kind of part of art for me. Like,
oh yeah.
Just like I guess like one thing that really motivates me is like the dynamics of like the human body, and so it's like I often want to draw like things where like the muscles and stuff like really like are put into action essentially, and like I can kind of feel it, and like I can like look at my own body and see like how the muscles are working and stuff like that. So like it like art and training kind of flows a bit into each other.
For sure. I've known a few people that are like that over the years.
I just want to be the muscle artist.
There's I feel like there are two main types of artists, are like never workout artists who are just like fully shrimp posture for like their whole life, and then there's like the like oh, well, I think about the human body all the time. I should be included in that conversation sort of person.
Oh god. There's this like really old like concept art panel that has like Anthony Jones on it that has like hundreds of thousands of views, I think, on YouTube. And it's a panel of like 6 artists, and all of them are like natural bodybuilders basically.
Yeah.
Like, they're all super jacked.
Yeah, there's a decent amount out there that's their thing. Part of it is like I've historically not been very good at paying attention to like the way that other people perceive me. Like I just don't. It hasn't been high on my priority list. Like, you know, I'm on the internet most of the time. Like who cares? And I'm like I'm more than a little autistic, and so I just like, you know, the idea of like how other people perceive me and like social cues and stuff, not really that big of a deal. And so I don't really think about the way other people see me physically very much. But then the older I get, the more I start to actually think about this. And part of that is like, I wonder, like, would people treat me more seriously if they met me in person and saw I was in shape? Or if like you know, people see on the internet that I'm somebody who's in decent shape, am I going to be seen as someone who's inherently more serious as a person? Because I think like society has some pretty screwed up biases, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of true.
Yeah, I mean, I think they call it like the halo effect or something. Like, attractive people are like automatically viewed as like a little bit more competent.
Mm-hmm. And so like I thought like, hey, if I'm gonna be in spaces where I'm trying to like be an expert and like you know, convince other people that they should trust my opinion on things, I should be in good shape and wear a Rolex. And even if I don't care for either of those things, because it's the kind of shallow shit that like nobody is only the very worst among us are going to highlight as an essential thing to like, you know, the sort of Andrew Tate version of the world. But like quietly under the surface, there is a lot of that.
I think like the halo effect only really works if you're actually into those things, kinda. Like, it's not really like everything you do and think and believe shapes your body, kinda, in a way. So it's not like you can just fake being into fitness, kinda, at least like on the subconscious level.
Well, I do always feel mentally better when I'm working out also. Like it's been a really good thing for my mental health too. I've got a number of reasons why I want to try to take another swing at it. But yeah, I'm just thinking through all the different ones out loud. Because it's, you know, it should be on my priority list for like a number of reasons. Like the mobility stuff, vanity stuff, the desire to be taken seriously, you know, all those things, like, I feel like they kind of culminate into thinking, hey, this should be a priority. And then the mental health thing is, like, actually really huge. I mean, that's, like, I think the major reason for a lot of people to get into it. So with the face established here, I feel like I'm in this isn't like as deeply as I would render it if it were like my own painting, but for like a morning study, pretty happy with it. Just gonna give her the weird face paint stuff. I don't know what's up with this face paint.
If you wanted to develop it further, would you like merge the layers together and paint on top, or would you like just add more like overlays essentially?
Yeah, there's some features I would definitely push around to get the likeness better, and I might before this is all over, but...
Oh, Jay told me to bring up knees over toes guy, who I've heard of. But
Knees over toes guy? Yeah, YouTube has been starting to throw those videos at me.
What? What? What are you talking about?
He's a YouTuber called Knees Over Toes Guy.
Yes, I have seen in my recommended feed, having never clicked on one of his videos.
I think his claim to fame is there was this myth floating around that like when you squat, you never want to have your knees go over your toes, and he kind of like pushed back against that successfully, and now the conventional wisdom in the fitness community has kind of changed.
Huh.
I think I'm gonna know.
So now I think what I have to do is I have to make sure to disprove him definitively and ruin his career. Come up with new scientific evidence that makes Knees Over Toes Guy look like a total fool.
I don't think he even like used scientific evidence. He mostly just like he I think the guy was like on the track to become like a professional basketball player, but he like fucked up his knees really badly.
Huh.
Had multiple surgeries and was told like he'd probably never. I don't know if it was as bad as never walk again, but was gonna have like mobility issues for his whole life. And he came up with like a routine that he used to like rehabilitate himself that involved a lot of stuff that's sort of like frowned upon.
He invented a squat technique so powerful as to defy fate.
Yeah, I
Spit
guess.
in the face of God himself.
Oh, apparently it's not about the guy. Jay's yelling at me.
Is it like maybe it's like YouTube knows, okay, these guys are nearly 40, like they're going from
Absolutely. No. I mean, YouTube's like, oh, guys who are just about to turn 40 are like 30% more likely to click on this video from somebody whose like YouTube name is Knees Over Toes Guy. And they're like, so they're like, just start, smashing videos into people's like recommended feeds the instant that like they start coming up on their 40th birthday. I'm sure it would work. I'm sure it would work. Yeah, if anybody in the chat has any questions about what I'm up to here, feel free to like hit me with them. I'm open to answering any kind of beginner questions about how to do this. And if you're at all interested in learning art, even if you're not an expert, I highly recommend that you come and join the Discord and give a shot to this yourself and use this this part of the day. If you're free during this part of the day to hang out and watch Twitch, like maybe come and hang out and do it also. Like it's this has been like a life-changing thing for me, is to start getting into these studies. And I'm really curious of what happens if more beginners start giving it a try, just doing photo studies along with the kind of imaginative work. Like I have a feeling that if somebody were to do these every day for 2 hours the way I've been doing them, that they would be able to go from 0 to something really impressive over the course of maybe just like 30 days. And, you can do it along with the community. So I'm just going to hit the Discord here real quick for anybody who's not in there. Boom. Huckleberry Art Discord.
I have one question.
Yes.
Would you, like, if you did like illustration, would you do the rendering and stuff like similar to this, or would you use a very different approach?
This is nearly identical to the approach that I use when I'm doing my own stuff. Oh, by the way, Jake, I have unmuted you. I've given you the Discord role, so if you pop out and pop back in again, you can speak. If you were wondering about that.
Oh, what's up?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I needed to give you a role to be able to unmute yourself. I just did it.
Oh.
Yeah, for this room in specific, the live on Twitch
okay.
room, people need to have a certain role on their profile to be able to speak. So that way
Okay.
we
I
like
think
reduce the possibility that someone's going to come in here and just mic spam.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think you said like something about being autistic, and I said gang, and that's it.
Oh, fair. That's fair.
So how do you continue if you do an illustration?
How do I continue from this point? I mean, it's just more of this. Like, once I have like a rough color, it is just like only a matter of time of like pushing things, like with this owl, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, it's like generally in the right spot, but like to refine it is really just a matter of like finding the colors in the scene nearby that look appropriate, and then selecting them and pushing them into where they need to be. And over time, you know, you can get more and more granular with it. You just start broad, and then as you move to like these tinier and tinier marks, tinier variations, smaller details, like it all starts to feel like the thing more and more, just kind of on its own. And you can just keep that up like forever until, you know, every single pixel has been touched and you're satisfied with the position of every little bit of surface texture and, you know, lighting and all of it. And you can focus on just that part of it. If you can get the color rough to have all the colors that you need, and the general sense of the lighting and the shape and the silhouette of things broadly correct, like you don't need to, like, you can bring in some reference if you get stuck on something, you're really wondering what it looks like. In this case, I mean, I have perfect reference up all the time. When I'm working on my own paintings, like obviously I don't have like an exact reference of what the thing's supposed to look like, so I'm drawing a certain amount off of my own assumptions, and then I'm also like able to pull in photo reference to be able to answer questions about, you know, where I might be off base in terms of lighting or details or anatomy or anything like that.
So you would have like a sketch and different references for different elements and so much.
Yeah, no, I mean, I already have like to start things off, it's just like with this process, it's like I'm starting off with a loose sketch, like, you know, in the case of one of my finished paintings, it's almost always a like a pencil sketch, and then I do like loose values over the whole painting to figure it out, and then loose colors. And like in this case, the color is just going full. I'm going the detail on top of the color. I guess if I were being a little bit more careful, I would make it a separate layer. Typically, I'm not able to do that because I'm using a different blending mode for applying colors. In this case, I'm using a normal mode for the color application. And so, you know, if I'm using normal mode for glazing, then I can just go straight into the detail in the same layer. But it really isn't like, if I have a sense of the structure already at this point, and I know, like, I have a mental library for what these materials are supposed to be, and I have a sense of the lighting, and I'm just keeping things consistent, I'm only ever making a few changes here and there. It's not like I have to invent a lot. Like, this is the stage of the painting where it's really easy to, like, talk and paint at the same time, because, like, there's not a lot of things to consider. It's really just a matter of being patient and, like, slowly working through all the issues until the whole thing is where it needs to be.
So you said pencil sketch. Do you work in traditional there?
Yep.
What's the trick?
Some people really prefer digital pencil for sketching out ideas. Personally, I never feel 100% comfortable with it unless it's like being done traditionally. Like, I feel like the higher fidelity of it makes it a lot easier for me to like draw expressively.
Yeah, like traditional has more flow to it somehow. Like, at least I feel that way. Like things just fall into place a bit better.
I'm gonna turn you up a little bit.
I used to think traditional was like way better than digital, but then Pete told me that like I didn't have this setting on in my tablet that like and now it's like, oh, this is actually like not that hard.
Yeah.
Wow, I've been like drawing digitally on hard mode for the past 10 years. All right.
What setting was it?
Oh, here, I'll show you.
God, what's it called?
It's different depending on what kind of tablet you have, but if you go to the tablet mapping, you need to like force proportions so that it makes it so that the proportions of the screen match the live area on the tablet 1-to-1. Otherwise, it stretches your inputs out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the default is for them to stretch the inputs. And I don't know why, because it's. Listen, I don't like making generalities where I say, like, hey, that's not the right way to work, but it's the wrong way to work for 99% of people, and it's the default on all tablet drivers across all brands, and I don't understand it. Like, it just totally baffles me what their whole deal is.
Yeah, like it's just this idea that if you are on the corner of the tablet, then it's also on the corner of the screen.
But you don't feel the corner of a tablet. Like, it's not like the work area of a tablet doesn't even go to the edge. It's just like a little tick mark on the surface of the tablet itself, which you don't see because you're not looking at it anyway. So, like, I don't buy that. You can't trick me. I don't believe you.
Yeah, I think I never had that problem because the screen always had the same aspect ratio as
Right.
the tablet.
On a display tablet, it doesn't come up. On a pen tablet, it's like always a problem. It's and it's total mystery. I mean, maybe we should start a campaign, an awareness campaign, and see if we can get it out to Wacom to get them to have drivers that don't have that as the default option. Liberate our people. You know, instead of like a workers' union, what if we just dedicate all of our political efforts to making sure that Wacom changes the default on the tablets forever to make it so that people don't have a hard time drawing on tablets anymore?
We're like lobbying Congress. We're right there next to people who are trying to like secure aid for like humanitarian things.
Yeah.
and
No,
there's
I
a
mean,
bunch of articles.
you ever watch Chad and JT Go Deep?
No.
You know what I'm talking about? It's these
Nope.
two like LA guys that they play this kind of like caricature version of themselves where they're these like surfer party guys, and they constantly show up to like city council meetings and like to advocate for funny things. And like because it's city council meetings, everyone's allowed to get 5 minutes. Like they get 5 minutes of just being able to do stand-up bits like in the format of city council meetings, and it's always funny.
Awesome.
So like
What do they call?
Chad and JT Go Deep.
All right.
They do a podcast too.
Awesome. I'm always looking for things to occupy my ears.
Yeah, they're very wholesome, very funny guys.
Oh man, dude, I am so glad to be doing.
So yeah, we could do like hit up some local government, I think, and tell them about this Wacom driver issue. I really wouldn't mind if we started to set up a picket line outside of we got to figure out where Wacom headquarters is and see if we can start getting some people out there picketing them to change the default on their drivers.
Imagine, heaven forbid,
Yeah.
but imagine somebody carries out like a terrorist attack on like U.S. soil.
No,
and they have,
listen,
like, a
I gotta tell you,
manifesto.
everybody, I don't care if it's in Minecraft, don't do terrorism for the sake
yeah,
of changing the tablet drivers. Like,
Right.
but anything short of that, I think maybe it's an option. Like, I think it should be on the table. I just wonder, like, we live in these times where we all feel so powerless, right? Can we all decide on an issue that is like we can agree upon? Like, can you really find someone who is authentically going to disagree with the position that the default should be to force proportions on the Wacom tablet driver?
Apparently, somebody at Wacom.
But somebody out there, somebody who may or may not be a terrorist themselves, believes
Or
that that's the
Satan.
correct option. But I think that rational people all agree that that's wrong. And in a world where we don't feel like we have a lot of power, maybe this is where we dig our heels in. And I don't think I don't think I could get canceled for this on Twitter. I mean, not that Twitter even technically exists anymore, but you know what I mean. Like, as a non-controversial stance that I'm going to put the whole weight of my being behind, this is not a bad one.
Well, you could be the first person to get canceled on X.
I think there's definitely someone who's beaten me to the punch, right? What's been the big main character on X since the big rebrand?
I have no idea.
Alan
I get out.
himself, I think.
Yeah, besides Elon doing it to himself like a fucking G. What kind of a
Well, Rizzo
gangster
got
do you have to
canceled.
be to like buy a social media platform just to get canceled on it? I spent $44 billion buying a platform just so people clown at you on it like all day, every day. That shows the sign of a truly powerful warrior. I think he's got that
The
war.
thing that's sad.
That's a
too, is
mindset.
that it seems to like actually get to him as well.
Oh yeah, totally. But like that's the whole point. I mean, would you really like put yourself in a situation if it wasn't going to bother you? Like
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. I think this is maybe the most powerful mindset of any man on the planet. That's why he's Elon. He's the person who's capable of this.
We're just behind the curve, I guess.
You got to get on his level. But yeah, I mean, can someone look up where is the Wacom headquarters? Is this how much of an investment is this going to be for me? Like, start actually like showing up in person and like campaigning employees and like turning this into a major media event.
In Kazo, in Japan, apparently.
What?
Okay.
They're a Japanese
Yeah.
company? How did I not know this?
Is like Japanese for like harmony, I think.
I totally would have thought they are like in California.
I was thinking California too.
Like it's just, I think like the way they treat their product, the customers. Like
Yeah, like shit.
Yeah, that doesn't seem very Japanese to me.
I agree. I was thinking exactly the same thing. So you're saying I'm going to have to go to Japan and try to convince a bunch of Japanese salarymen in suits to make a change to a piece of software that I use every day? This is so all of a sudden starting to sound way harder. I don't know if I have like I can be enough of a nuisance, I think, to be able to affect change for an American company. But like I don't know what motivates a Japanese company to make change. Like if it were Nintendo, like like Nintendo, people have been screaming at Nintendo about stick drift for the last 8 years or whatever since the Switch came out. They don't give a shit, like what are you gonna do? Wacom has big Nintendo don't give a shit energy for sure.
It's a mystery.
Oh man, I'm so demotivated right now. I was thinking this was going to be a fun adventure that I was going to be able to dig in on, and now I'm defeated.
Damn. I guess this is why, like, whenever you see that things are a particular way,
Yeah.
and like you identify a problem with it, there's probably a reason why, like, somebody hasn't already. come along and figured it out.
I refuse to give in to that attitude. I refuse to just decide that the world is the way it is and there's no changing it. I believe in the individual's ability to affect the world around them.
No, I'm not saying you shouldn't believe in like changing things, but like things are always harder than you think at like first glance,
Yeah.
and you're discovering that.
Yeah.
Realize
No, it's
that
definitely a
Wacom is
harder
not-
problem than I thought.
So don't give up. Don't be demotivated.
Okay.
You need to be like Elon. You need to change the name of your
Uh-huh.
company to X.
I need to take out a $44 billion loan from the Saudis, and then I'm gonna put a giant glowing sign on my roof that violates all building codes, and it's gonna say change the default setting on Wacom
There you
drivers.
go. That will inspire the Japanese companies to take you. Maybe that's what Elon's been doing this entire time.
You think that Elon is really on board with this mission of mine? You think that maybe this is like what's motivating him to make all these weird, like what everyone else is calling dumb moves, but really it's a matter of him being a genius, slowly moving towards the Wacom, objective to change the way that Wacom does its drivers?
I mean, his decisions don't make sense any other way.
Right. Potentially the only explanation.
We should all tweet our thanks at him.
Oh.
Thanks, Elon.
Thanks, Elon, for getting the word out about the tablet driver situation.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be fully frank here. The tablet drivers are shitty for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But this one in particular feels it just feels like a single switch that would need to get flipped in order to make it work right.
It could really cause a chain reaction. Developers all over the world
Uh-huh.
would be, you know what? We are bad at our job.
Yeah. The devs should do something, I think, is what we're all saying.
I like how your stream, which is ostensibly an art stream, has turned into this very long joke about tablet drivers.
What else are we going to talk about? I mean, I could go and explain out loud that I'm making another brushstroke here, but I've been on this detail stage for a bit now. I'm spending way more time fucking around with tiny little micro details in a way that I normally don't do on these studies, and it's kind of bumming me out. I feel like this is what makes painting take too long for me generally. And I think I need to zoom out a little bit, make some bigger changes, get some of these key areas polished up, because I was planning on only going till 2 o'clock. I got 20 minutes to put this thing in the bag, put this owl in a bag and ship it out to the Wacom headquarters in Japan as a threat. What's going to happen to them if they don't fix these goddamn drivers? I was for Huckleberry, I was going to put together a tutorial video of all the things that you need to do to make the drivers not work bad, and just be like, hey, if you're thinking about doing digital art, jump right in. It's easy. Okay, now that I've got you committed, go in and to your go into regedit. And here's a list of things I want you to change that your computer's going to tell you a warning telling you not to change these things, but it's wrong. And I'm right. I need you to believe me. Yeah, so she's got this little bow coming off her neck here. I wonder if it's actually starting higher up, and that's the one thing that's throwing me off about it.
Oh man, Pete, I'm super glad that you convinced me to go back to doing personal work. It's so much more enjoyable than grinding away on client work that doesn't even pay all that well.
What did you do with the client work? Did you just dump it, or are you just putting it off while you mess around with personal stuff?
I'm just putting it off. I think what I might do is devote an hour of my time, per day, to try to at least chip away at the client stuff. And I don't know. My hope is that maybe some people just get tired of waiting for me to get around to their thing and abandon me.
Yeah, I had a commission where somebody commissioned me to do a oil painting, and I was working on it on and off for I think about 18 months. And then they eventually were like, that's too long, right? I want my money back. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I was making progress on it bit by bit, but it was I don't know how to finish an oil painting. So it was not going that smooth. And I was like, yeah, man, absolutely. No arguments. I just gave him his money back. Then I finished the painting. And I made it into prints, and I sold some prints, and I sold the original. Though I didn't finish. I finished it digitally, and then I varnished the unfinished painting and just sold that as a unfinished painting. Somebody bought it anyway.
Okay, awesome.
It was fine. If it's So the thing about moving from commission work to personal work is it can be a big deal to figure out a way to monetize that personal work. That way you don't feel like that you're making a deep sacrifice by doing it instead of the commissions. Have you thought about any kind of monetization that you're like interested in exploring? Because I don't want to make like a bold suggestion and then have be like just a new albatross around your neck.
For now, I'm just right. Like, so I have a little bit of money saved up. I live with my dad. My expenses are really low. And I'm in touch with like a, I don't know what you'd like call this exactly, but like Canada has like a free, like publicly funded, sort of like job finding assistance thing.
Communism.
Yeah. The communists are helping me get a job right now. Yeah, so like I'm reasonably optimistic that I'll probably have some kind of job related to art within like the next few months here. So I can just like do that and not have to worry about commissions and things like that. And in my free time, what I'm thinking of trying to do is just like focus on building an audience for the time being. Like,
yeah.
Right now, I'm just trying to like get my drawing to where I want it to be. Like, there's that guy Hamsung Chul I really like. I'm doing the thing you suggest, where like you just spend any amount of time on like a painting to like get the look that you want.
Yeah.
I'm doing that right now. It's turning out reasonably well. I feel like this drawing I'm working on is actually like a level up for me already, and I've only spent like, I don't know, like 9 hours on it so
Nice.
far.
So I don't want you to have new pressures in your life or whatever, but if you don't already have a Patreon set up,
Yeah, I need to do that.
I don't recommend anybody set up a Patreon and then make new work associated with it, where it's like, oh, well, I'm going to do a painting every week, but then there's a bonus painting every month that like only the Patreons get to see. No, like just don't make a special blog, don't make any other special content. It's just like, you know, because you're on DeviantArt. DeviantArt's got a little bit of a culture already of people who kind of get funding their favorite artists. So like if you are just making the paintings you're going to make anyway, and you just have in the description like, hey, I've got a Patreon or whatever, and you know, you just get people to like chip in $5 a month if they're like a super fan, that is not $0, I think. For some people who are just starting off, it's going to be $0, or it's just going to be family members or whatever. But
Yeah.
I think in your situation, I don't know how many followers you have on DA, but
1.7K.
that's not a lot. You might not get much out of something like a Patreon, but I have a lot of confidence that that follower count's going to go up somewhere. Maybe not DA. Maybe it's going to be X before it collapses into the ground, or Threads or Blue Sky or whatever. Like, I have a feeling you're going to figure out a place to like get your work seen sometime over the next year. And I think having a place to funnel those super fans so that, you know, it creates money that's an argument against future commissions. That's the main thing I like Patreon for, is it's like, okay, well, if I don't make, you know, I make $30 or whatever every time I do a painting for myself. Not life-changing money, but it certainly makes the argument against doing a commission for some other asshole for $30.
Yeah. So yeah, what you asked me before, like, about like how I'm planning on monetizing things. Yeah, for now I need to build an audience, right? Like a Patreon's not going to do me all that good if I have like less than 100 followers on every platform except DeviantArt, which only has like 1.7K.
Yes,
I can
but
get that figured out.
if you have it already done,
Yeah.
it's good. It's a good thing to have it already done and in place. And not just for the sake of like, hey, there's maybe a speculative audience that might happen in the future, but also like, you know, accountability. Like, hey, I release a new painting for my Patreon people every month. And that way, if you're going through a month where you're just like, you know, you're not feeling very focused, struggling to get some stuff done. It gets to the last week, and you go like, I should get one of these designs finished because I need to deliver something for Patreon. And like that feeling of just being obligated to the people who are paying my bills every month has gotten me to finish a lot of paintings that I'm very, very happy I finished. Like, as far as motivation is concerned, obligation to other people can be really powerful, and Patreon fills that in a really healthy way, or it can if you structure it in a way that's healthy.
That's actually an upside to commissions as well, is like having that accountability. Like,
yeah, but like I like Patreon because it's like commission, but from people who actually want to see you be yourself, as opposed to like, you know, draw their dumb D&D character.
Yeah. But yeah, as far as how to monetize it goes, I don't know. My understanding is you want to have sort of like multiple income streams.
Yes.
You want to be selling digital as well as physical products. I honestly have no idea how I'm going to sell physical products because like I don't really have the money to like buy prints and like ship them out, and I don't know how to do any of it.
Well, you can start off with print on demand, 0 setup cost.
Yeah.
And then if you find that you've got some success there, but you're not happy with the splits, then you invest a little money in setting up a better solution. The other thing you can do is crowdfunding. Again, Kickstarter has been fantastic for a lot of people I've known over the years. You know, that's again 0 setup cost and 0 risk, because like, you know, you say, oh, I'm going to make some prints, and then nobody turns up to buy them. You just shuffle the whole thing onto the table and pretend like it never happened. And that's exactly what it's there for. Like, nobody wants that to happen ever. They get super scared at the idea of running a Kickstarter because they're like, what if it fails? I'm like, the whole format of Kickstarter is designed to allow people to fail comfortably, which is part of the reason I like it so much. I've always liked Kickstarter. I've got years and years of me being a big Kickstarter booster.
Okay. All right, yeah, maybe that's worth it. I'm not sure what I guess I could kickstart some prints or something.
There's 2 easy options off the bat. One of them is prints. The other one is some sort of small collectible merchandise like pins. Like I've recommended enamel pins to a number of people who never really thought that much about enamel pins, and that they're so happy they did it because it's just like they're really small and easy to transport. So, like, if you ever did any live shows or whatever at any point, like, it's really easy to just get, like, hundreds of dollars worth of inventory in, like a backpack, basically. They're also means they're easy as shit to ship, and they're pretty cheap to stock. If you've already done a pre-sale on them through something like a Kickstarter, pins can be really good. So, I know some people who set up a pin campaign as, like, a way of, like, getting support from people who like their art, but, you know, it's not tied to, like, wall decoration. So you don't get the people who are like, what am I going to do with a print? It's like it's a little more physical, and so it's a little easier to just say yes to. And so people I know have done it. Have made anywhere from like $1,000 to $10,000 from doing like a small pin campaign. I've known people that have done pin campaigns that are significantly larger, tens of thousands. But that's usually if they're really into it and like have a really good vision for what a big pin collection is going to look like. But you know, some people I've advised this to over the years, they'll do a few $1,000, you know, off the bat, almost no audience. A lot of there's already like a bit of a discovery through Kickstarter. So if you've got good-looking work and a good idea, it will actually sell even if you never show your face on social media.
Okay. Yeah. There's also there's a few YouTube channels that are run by like artists who don't have social media followings and are nevertheless very financially successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, one's called Art Business with Ness. She claims to be making like 10K a year, or 10K a year. That's not very high. 100K a year. And she has like almost no like social media.
Let me guess.
following.
Etsy.
Yeah, she does sort of like multiple income streams, and she also does client work, but she doesn't do like work for just like people messaging her on DeviantArt. She's very proactive about putting her portfolio in front of like companies that have enough money to like pay her like $50 an hour to do stuff for them.
But yeah, when it comes to independent sales without social media, the answer is Etsy. They have a search algorithm. So if you're selling the kind of product that people are likely to be searching for, like some people do like fan art related stuff, that will sometimes show up in an Etsy search. So if you sell the right kind of products and you're good with working within the Etsy algorithm, you can get a decent amount of sales without having to ever build an audience.
Okay. All right, that's worth keeping in mind.
But that's pretty specialized. Like, there's a few different ifs in there.
Yeah, I feel like part of my problem too. I kind of knew this would be a problem going into like anime fantasy art, but like I'm like not that much of a weeb. Like I kind of got into anime art through art, not through like media.
Yeah.
And so like if I were doing fantasy art, I would have a ton of ideas for products I could make that like my my art could go into just fine.
Sure.
Because I'm like super, enmeshed in like the Dungeons and Dragons community, right? I can think of tons of products I could make that there would be like pretty good demand for.
Give me some.
Well, one thing that occurred to me the other day is that like the guy who's making like a dress up game who I have like an interview with.
Yeah.
People want character art all the time, right?
Yeah.
But there aren't really any good options for it. I guess AI is a better option now, but like there are these like character builders people have where you can make custom art of your character, but like none of them really look all that good. Mostly people just kind of like download a piece of art off the internet, but like it usually doesn't perfectly fit their vision for their character or whatever. I just think like something like Hero Forge or whatever isn't that different from a dress-up game. It's just a dress-up game for like fantasy nerds. If somebody's able to like make enough money that they can pay like 9 employees off of like a Japanese themed dress-up game, like what if I made like a really awesome like character builder in D&D that has like super good art, like, and I could even set up like microtransactions potentially.
I mean, most dress-up games are for kids, aren't they? It's like stuff on the iPad.
I have no idea. It's something I hadn't even thought of until I got this like interview.
Yeah, I figure my guess would be it's probably the primary customers for children.
Okay.
And so like it's not that it's like grown-up fantasy fans who want to see their character realized that are going to be paying microtransactions. Like it's probably a child who is like messing around with this at a restaurant or whatever, and like the parent is like, "Oh, my kid really likes this like little thing. Let me throw $5 at it because they're playing it constantly. We got our money's worth out of it."
Yeah, the other thing that that occurs to me is like Dungeons and Dragons is more niche than like the general population of children.
Yes. So like, yeah.
The more niche you go.
Yeah, somebody I knew, like, he started off just following my advice and like building a Kickstarter for just his personal work. Just sold some prints and stuff, and then wanted to do something more ambitious, and got into business with somebody else to make custom dice that were horror themed dice, and and now he sells millions of dollars worth of dice.
Oh, damn! All right.
I'm like, damn, he's doing better than me. So.
But yeah, other things I kind of thought of is like, like if I were doing fantasy art, right? Like, there are all these like virtual tabletops where you can sell assets on the store or whatever.
That's a good point.
And most of the assets don't look that good. I could absolutely compete.
What would be a good product to make? Look up Deck of Many from Cartamajigs.
Right, Deck of Many. No, not deck of many things. Stupid Google.
I mean, it's like I think there's a D&D item that's also called that, but
Yeah.
so what they did is they made these kind of like item and monster tokens to be used for tabletop gaming that are kind of like the digital
I've seen
assets.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They sold
I
a lot
bet
of
you
those.
lots of people buy
They sold a
these.
lot of those
Yeah.
card decks, but like, they've got their own style for it. I think I did a card for them once.
Yeah.
But like doing an anime version of one of those, like everybody wants to do things in their own aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
Like you could release gaming related, even like one of the things that I sold a lot of over the years was Magic the Gathering tokens.
Uh-huh.
Like if you were to do anime versions of popular Magic the Gathering tokens, you could just make like simple illustrations and print them out on cards. You don't need a license. You don't need any credibility in this. One of the people I know that made a bunch of money on tokens did classical art that was all public domain and turned them into like classical art tokens, which is like not defensible as like a copyright because it's public domain, but also like they kind of are the only ones that care to make it. So even if you don't have your own art, like Magic tokens are a really good gaming accessory product that's like easy as shit to produce, like a few cents a piece, and they sell for like $1 or $2. And you can make those into a deck and sell them as packages, which is like Cardamajigs was selling my single tokens along with some other companies that had distribution rights in like other parts of the world. But yeah, I think they're moving away from selling singles into selling packs. Like I always prefer to sell packs. Like you could get a custom card deck for a couple of dollars and sell it for $20. And yeah, and if you were to have the cool Final Fantasy Tactics style looking ones, you would be, unique in the marketplace.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I kind of wrote it off, but like you might be right that like there's enough overlap between the audience for like JRPGs and Dungeons and Dragons that like people might, because like most of the people who commission me are actually like D&D fans who don't mind that I draw in an anime style, or that's actually what
I
they
think it's
want.
actually probably the reason they're contacting you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of friends who I played D&D with who are all like big weebs and like Final Fantasy 14 and stuff like that. Like,
All right.
yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't like write off those ideas. Maybe I should just like try.
Here's the thing: is like, when it's something like a token pack, like you can look through your existing body of work and see how much stuff you already have that's kind of like a best fit, and then see if you want to try out doing any of the other ones that like you don't have art for, and
Okay.
and then like see how far you are along to make like a product line already just with your existing inventory of IP.
Okay. I've actually done anime art of Magic the Gathering just for fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my friends were playing like the Magic flat book for like Dungeons and Dragons. And I felt like drawing people's characters and stuff, so I have a bunch of like Ravnica sort of like factions as like anime characters.
Sure. I helped work on the concept team for the second Ravnica push, so I'm
Oh, cool.
really familiar with them.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, I like the Ravnica guilds. I think it's a cool bit of design.
Yeah. Which one's your favorite?
In terms of what? Playing? In terms of like their aesthetic?
Yeah, in terms of like how they look.
I don't know. I mean, like they all represent kind of different archetypes, and so it's like.
Oh, did you do the Selesnya guys?
I did do the Selesnya constructs.
Oh, okay.
That
Yeah,
are like
yeah.
marble
That's what
bits
made
of
me
white
think.
marble covered in vines. That's a design of mine.
Yeah, they're like weird faceless dudes. It's like, oh.
Weird giant faceless dudes? Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, that's me.
Yeah, my favorite's Orzhov, though. That like black, gold, and white color scheme. It's pretty pimp. And I like how they have like vampires and stuff. Like, I don't know. I love like undead fantasy creatures.
Yeah, I also designed the undead for Theros.
Oh yeah, yeah. I actually
all the stuff with the golden masks and things. That's all me.
I forgot about this. I was like playing in a Theros game, and I like a Theros D&D game, and I like drew my character in that. Like recently, I have a piece of he's like an undead Theros dude. I think I was looking at concept art that you did when I like drew that character.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I designed Erebos, and I came up with the idea for Erebos and like the undead in Theros, and
Yeah,
like,
they're cool. I really like what you did with
basically all the mono black stuff started from me. Like nobody else was touching it during the concept push. I was like, I'll take all of this cool shit if you guys don't want it.
Yeah. They're like a good fit for it too. Faceless dudes.
Well, it was like I was looking up reference of like stuff from ancient Greeks, and there was like this golden mask thing that was like pressed flat, and it looked really weird and like inhuman. And I'm like, what if everybody who goes in the underworld, like, because they're like, well, what are we gonna do for the mono black? Like every like mono color has like a non-human race for every set.
Yeah.
And so there's like a question of like, well, we think we know what we're going to do for green. We think we know what we're going to do for red, but we don't have any ideas for white or black. And so I was like, I'm going to take a big swing at this. And so I was like, okay, so we're going to do zombies for black. And they're like, why? What? Like, they're like, zombies aren't a good fit. It's zombies would be like an Innistrad thing. I'm like, no. It's all these guys that have like returned from the underworld, because the underworld's a physical place. But when you come back, you like have like a golden mask that's created by like the god of the dead. And they're like, we don't have anything better, so that's it. That's the mythos. Like, no writers involved. No one pitched anything. It was just like me and like one concept stand up, just like telling them that's what I thought it should be, and then no one ever argued with it. And that's what the mythos for Theros is to this day. And they've built like huge amount of storytelling about it, like with like Elspeth like going into the Theros underworld and stuff, and like, yep, it's all just built off of some bullshit I came up with during the concept art stand up.
That's awesome. Yeah, it is really cool though.
I thought it was a good idea, but like typically I'm used to like having a good idea, what I think is a good idea, and like telling people about it, and them just like telling me why I'm wrong, and then me being upset and then like basically turning into like, I think you should leave sketch. So it was weird that I was just like given the latitude to do this, then everyone just kind of like went along with it, and then like, I don't know, the idea just kind of got like adopted into the larger creative team, I think, and just accept it as like that's what this is now. That's what the world's like.
Yep, turned out cool.
Which is weird. I mean, it's like, I don't really get, like, when you work on a team like that, you don't really get credit for stuff. So it's like I can, run around and tell everyone like, oh yeah, I made that up. That's mine, but it's not really mine in the sense I don't get to actually protect it. Like, I don't get to like be credit if they make a Magic the Gathering movie and Erebos shows up. I don't get a credit, probably. I'm not getting the credits for the movie. I'm not going to get any residuals. Like, it's not going to be treated as my idea. Contractually, it's not technically my idea. It's like owned by Wizards of the Coast, even though like, I was just a contractor who was there for a couple weeks, came up with the idea. And it's just like, yep, I can technically say it, but might even be a point at some point in the future where someone's like, no, you see, we built on that in a way that's different, and so now like we don't even want to like technically credit you with it anymore. So
and there's I think there's an early episode of like Feng Zhu's podcast where I forget what he says exactly, but like it's something along the lines of like, if you're in concept art thinking that everyone's going to know your name and you're going to be really famous and get lots of credit for things, you're in the wrong industry.
Yeah. I saw someone on Twitter the other day complaining that in all these movie discussion podcasts and like YouTube series and stuff, they like never mention concept artists, that like the directors get credit for everything. And I'm like, yeah, that's like That's like the movie industry. It's like it's a big collaborative team effort, but there's like a handful of people whose name gets on the poster, and they get to walk away with it. Everybody else, that's just their job is to be anonymous.
Weirdly, the exception to that seems to be like JRPGs. Like a
Think
lot
so?
of them. Yeah. Like everybody knows that like Mika Picasso worked on like the latest Fire Emblem or whatever, right? Like. And everybody knows the name of the guy who like did all the concept art and stuff for like Octopath Traveler. I can't remember it off the top of my head because it's like a Japanese name, but like his name gets mentioned in like articles and stuff like that. George Kamitani was like in the news in the West for a while when he made like Dragon's Crown. Yeah, just for whatever reason, JRPGs get like the name of like some of the more important concept artists who worked on them. Like
Yeah, and like the guy who's the Metal Gear guy.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean it doesn't really happen so much in Western game development or in
I
film
feel
that
like
much.
that should change.
Yeah,
This is another thing we need to bring to the attention of Congress.
Well, labor union.
Yeah.
You know.
Like push the UFO guy aside.
Oh my God, what if he's right though?
Well, you know what bothers me the most about that guy?
What?
He, like the congresswoman was like asking him like if he found alien pilots or whatever. He's like, yes, biologics were recovered, and it's like
Biologics.
You
I was
just-
like, who says biologics? What a weird.
you didn't say aliens like a normal person. What is this?
Well, they don't even call them UFOs anymore. You know, like they're like, let's get technical about this. They're UAPs.
Yeah, it's like military jargon for everything.
Yeah. That guy looks so much like a guy you would meet and who talk your ear off at a bonfire.
Yeah.
That I have a hard time
Yeah.
believing him as like a believable military source.
Yeah, because there's been so much sort of like of a hubbub around this, and like Congress is hearing out the guy. It led me to believe that like it would like there must be something to it, right? Otherwise, like Congress wouldn't be hearing out this guy, and people wouldn't be like, "It's true, man. There's really aliens." But like after like watching the footage of like the hearing, it's like, wait, he actually has like no evidence for any of the things he's claiming. What is this? Why is
No,
everyone
he
thinking it's-
did say, "Nah, dude, believe me." He's
Yeah.
like, yeah. So, did we have crashed alien spaceships? He's like, yeah, totally.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, can you show them to me? He's like, no way, I'm under NDA. Okay. Never stopped me before.
These are the priorities that Congress must, well, prioritize. That's why they're called priorities, I guess. Hearing a guy talk about aliens. Trust me, bro.
Yeah.
They're out there. One of those big-
I've been texting everybody about like, yo, are you keeping up with LK99? And like, because I really am curious about this thing because, you know, it's not a trust me, bro situation. It's like, you know, people are making some claims, and the scientific community is like, hey, we're gonna check on that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, the superconductor thing.
Yeah.
Kobe was talking about it.
Yeah, because like I mean, what I'm hearing online is people are saying if room temperature superconductor is easy to make, that basically makes it free to build fusion energy. That like part of the reason why it's so energy intensive to like get a fusion reaction going is because you need superconductors to be able to do it. And if you have superconductors that work at room temperature, that the amount of energy required to start a fusion reaction goes like down to like a totally easy amount, like almost instantly. So it would be like with the technology built on the other technology that we already have today, like that if LK99 is like real, it actually is a superconductor that's easy to make, works at room temperature, all that kind of shit, that we could be looking at infinite energy, like in the next like 5 years. Like it would be completely world changing, century defining technology. And
That would be cool.
no one can agree on whether or not it's actually happening, which is a little
Yeah.
frustrating. It's a hell of a hoax it's unclear because like there's people who are claiming that they're replicating it to some degree. There's like charts and people are saying, you see this line right here? That's proof that this shit's all real. And I'm like, okay. I don't know how to read graphs on whether or not something's a superconductor. Like I do JPEGs. Donatello
Yeah.
does machines. I do JPEGs.
Yeah, I know that feel. Math. Not understand. Have art brain.
Yeah, I really try to learn the math stuff too, though. I really like the idea of exotic math. Like really, like some of like the surreal sides of math really call to me as like, because there's stuff in math that makes the world seem like a bigger, stranger, more interesting place, and I dig that. And so I'll watch like what's it, 2 brown, 1 blue, 1 blue, 2 brown, whatever it is. Like weird like YouTube math channels, and I'll listen to them try to explain this, and I'll like see like if I can listen to enough of these channels, will I start to understand the lingo just through like context. Like if I listen to enough math explanations on the internet, will I get good at understanding math by default? And so far, no. The answer is I still suck at math. Like I don't understand even like there's Veritasium videos that still slide off of me, and that guy's for like babies. So I am definitely not like a math guy, but there's some math concepts out there that are so intriguing to me. Because they do you know about the fundamental question about whether or not math is invented or discovered? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like, there's some shit out there that I've learned about that really unravel that question in interesting ways. And it starts to give a real strong case, a counterintuitive case, to the idea that math is ultimately a human invention and not necessarily a universal language.
Oh, yeah, I think I agree with that. Not that I've like gone super deep on the subject or anything, but like, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't blab about it. I don't.
So I don't know that much about it either, but like, that's not a door that I ever really kicked open before, and it was like, hey, if the idea that like we think of numbers, addition, counting as like being just like the most obvious thing in the world and got to be universal across like all understandings of reality, and that might all be just an invention and just a story that we made up, is one that gives credence to a universe that expands the definition about what. Like, it makes you think that maybe we're only seeing a small sliver of what's ultimately all out there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like always occurred to me that I don't know. Like whenever we like count things, right? There's not actually anything in the number that corresponds to like the physical universe. Like we're the ones making the connection. Like, what is there in like an apple that makes it like one apple? I don't know. I don't know if I'm actually making any sense.
No, I know what you mean. It like becomes existential really quickly, which is the reason I like that kind of stuff. Like if you look up, there's a thing called surreal numbers where there's different alternate forms of counting that interface with like concepts like infinity much more naturally than our standard counting systems, and they're useful for the sense that they give greater context to difficult to understand ideas, but then they also make what seems like basic and obvious stuff slightly more complicated than it seems like it needs to be, which makes you wonder like which is the easy and obvious idea and which is the one that's just being kind of like made up and theoretical.
Yeah, there are actually like multiple logics as well.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. It's not something I've gone super deep on. So like I don't really know what the difference between like modal logic and regular ass logic is, but there are actually like
Well, I'm
multiple
calling this
logics
study
with it.
done. I went long on it because I went way too hard on drawing a ton of little bird feathers and like detailed rendering and stuff, but I'm calling this one complete and putting it on the pile.
Oh damn. Dude, you paint fast. Like, whenever I try to paint something in 2 hours, it ends up way messier than like what you have here. I mean, you're like way more
I'm
experienced.
curious what it looks like if you do one of these.
Oh, you know when you were talking to the guy who did like a really good drawing of like a robot for like his portfolio submission, and then he did like bad painting on top of it?
Yeah.
That's me whenever I like paint things.
Okay. I'm just curious. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I guess I could give it a shot. It's been a while since I've tried to do like a painting in like 2 hours.
Because like, I'm over here doing these photo studies every single day. I keep inviting people to do them along with me. And we see like a decent amount out on the Discord where I'm going to upload this right now.
Oh no, I guess I actually did. I was doing value studies a few weeks ago. I was giving myself an hour time limit. They're much messier than like what you have, but I wasn't going for like a good looking image. I was just trying to like improve the values in my like illustrations.
I like the studies that I've done where I have these like bright call out colors where I'm like, instead of pushing to white, I'm pushing to like some saturated pigment instead. Who's that guy who's everyone's going crazy over on Twitter? Yiming Lee or something like that?
I don't know, man. All the really awesome like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Taiwanese painter, they all just like blend together because like the names are like
You're not so good
like
with
my
them?
brain just registers them as like foreign name.
Yeah.
You know?
Like,
Like Asian sounding name.
I could see
Like-
myself going and doing better on like the hands and face on something like this, but then the like looser nature of like the other parts I kind of dig, and then like the weird color thing I did here I really like, and it's the sort of thing I never do for myself in my personal work. See, this one was me like I wasn't going nuts over it, and this was me just doing like all normal layers. I think I was like, I started to realize that like I could do like weird. Oh man, these earlier studies, I'm like really letting parts go. I'm really not being precious about it. Maybe I should get back to that a little bit. I mean to try out new messy brushes to see if I can kind of like get different kinds of like messiness naturally without having to work for it. Whenever I do one that is like attempting to be like closer to just realistic, I don't have the same fondness for it as when I'm doing something that is like that I'm stylizing in some particular way. These more stylized ones are like my favorite looking back on them.
Dude, I hate just sitting there trying to like copy a photo as accurately as I possibly can. I've never done it. I always give up after like 3 hours.
Really? Because like, yeah, I feel like as I'm going forwards with this, like the smoother parts, I'm able to get smoother faster. And then even like when I'm keeping things kind of looser and brushier, it doesn't feel as messy. It's starting to feel a little bit more intentional just from me having repeated this like 35, 36 times now.
Yeah.
But
You're like experimenting in like interesting ways that I feel like people don't usually when they do studies.
I think they do. I feel like I'm not experimenting enough. Like I feel like today was another case of like the only thing I'm going to do different from the reference is like minor color palette shift combined with like a flat background.
Yeah.
But like I'm getting more fiddly with like the face and stuff because I'm looking back on some of these older ones and they're like really not super fiddly on like the faces.
I mean, like I think that's a good thing, right? Like I think people should be trying to be as creative as they can be in
Yeah.
like their studies. But yeah, I don't know. Like I've kind of said this before, but I feel like a lot of people use studies as a way to like. I mean, I certainly did at one point in like my development as like a way to avoid putting themselves out there creatively. So like there's a lot of fear of like, no, I don't want to like try to do a
But
different color
like,
palette than what's.
but that's the thing is like you are not going to be kept away from your anime drawings.
Yeah.
So.
Oh no, I'm not protesting against the idea of doing studies. Like I'm way past using studies as some kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't know, hiding hole or whatever.
I think what I need to do is like when I've got some of these like more medium-sized shapes that I'm like leaving be rough, instead of like the temptation for me is to like go from having them be rough and then take another pass and tighten everything down. But instead of tightening it down to go with smaller details, like having smaller details in parts looks really good, especially when it's in contrast with like rougher rest areas. But what I think I should try to push for in a future study is like in this one, I started stylizing my strokes a little bit and having these bigger, like more Leyendecker like planes with like visible brush strokes that are running like parallel to each other. I always really like that look. And like, you know, the concern I have with some of these is that where they get rougher, they're just kind of like the strokes are kind of going in every direction. There's like very little brush control and they're kind of going all over the place. It's where I either get like really, really tight and specific with it, or where I get really, really loose that it starts to feel good. But in these intermediate stages, I think I need to just commit to like broader planes and let them be simpler in shape rather than like just have them be kind of blobby in general. Because that general blobbiness, it doesn't feel finished or good. It feels like accidentally rough in a way that I'm not appreciating. So if I'm not going to like get in there and like smooth it all out, I think I should probably make it a little boxier and more plainer. Give that a try. I'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah, actually, so you're like way more advanced at painting than I am. Like most of the stuff you're saying is like too big brain for my smooth brain.
Really?
But, oh yeah, dude. You've probably seen like some of my like more rendered stuff on my ArtStation and been like everyone always tells me, oh, you're not that bad at painting. You did like a couple things. But those took like 100 hours, and I'm not sure I could do them again. Like it just took so much trial and error. And I was like using reference really heavily. And every time I move on to the painting phase, like it's just I'm completely lost. I have no confidence. It always takes tons of experimenting and like repainting the thing a couple times before I finally find something that works.
Yeah.
Like when I draw, I'm just following a formula, right? Like I know how to like take a sketch to like a finished piece of line art, or how to take a thumbnail to a sketch. But when I have to take a piece of line art to like a painted finished thing, it's just like, oh god, I have no idea what to do. Yeah,
I'm always giving out the advice like, screw it, don't worry about learning to paint. Like you're not need to be a painter, you're a drawer. And like I've given that advice out so many times, and every time I tell myself it's the right advice. That person loves drawing and they hate painting. They shouldn't beat themselves up over it. But I'm wondering, because we hang out a little bit more, if it's worth it for me to like see what happens if I push you, try to pressure you into painting to see if it like turns into a thing more. Like if there is a way of sort of focusing on that, because I've had people try to hit me up for like mentorship in like learning painting technique. And I'm always like, well, you start with the thing and then you kind of block it in and then you smooth it out. Like, no problem. And they go like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, and now that I'm like looking at this process a little bit more academically, I'm wondering if it would be, I wonder if it would be an interesting experiment to see like, hey, what can you do? If you're just like waiting on the Canadian government to hand you like a government issued job over the next 30 days, like maybe it's worth it for you to like give it a try and see if you can dramatically upgrade your painting ability in 30 days. I'll look at the stuff with you like on stream and things, and we can like talk about it.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I'd be down. I've actually, I was thinking of bringing up when we were talking about like learning materials stuff the other day. I think a major component of what's tripping me up with like painting so much is I'm not very anime has like broken my brain a little bit when it comes to values. If you look at a lot of really high quality anime art, the value structure is a little bit weird sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, and nobody kind of agrees on like what the correct values are to use on a piece of anime art. Like, there's a lot of stylistic decisions, sort of like interwoven with like objectively good, like painting advice and stuff like that. And it's very hard to sort of disentangle all that when you're like still learning. But yeah, like a major component of I think the difficulties I'm having with painting are my values skew too white. Like, there needs to be like 10% less white in like everything I do.
Yeah.
And there's no dark shadows. There needs to be like 30% less white in like the darkest areas of the painting. I think I can implement that.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of that comes from like, digital art. As a digital artist, it's like really, really easy to get stuck. Like, you have to like do specific tricks oftentimes to like control your colors so that you don't end up with washed out colors, because that's the default.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, you might be a work process thing to like get it so that you don't end up having washed out colors. And like, if like the biggest thing is like trying to convince someone that that's something they even need to do. Cause like, if you see somebody's painting and you're like, you got to stop rendering down to black. They go, what do you mean? And you're like, see how your colors kind of mix with black and it makes them all muddy? They go, no, that's blue. It's not, I didn't put any black in there. And you're like, well, yeah. I mean, like, if it were like an actual painting, it would be like, to get that color, you would have to like, take a pigment, mix black into it, and it makes it. And they'd be like, oh, I'm not doing that. That was how I was when I was first learning this stuff, is like people would give me this advice, but I had no context for it because it wasn't actually working with colors traditionally. And so it took time for me to sort of see how it was like, how digital art looked different than what, digital art like colors looked like. And, seeing a lot of oil paintings in person and then trying to go back to the board and replicate those things and like figuring out what work processes like helps me like sidestep the shortcomings on digital color mixing. Like that was a long learning process, but like I only ever enabled that process by knowing it was a problem, which you're already there. So like all you need to do is like kind of, I think, figure out a process to like make sure you have control to like get the things you want out of the color. And like in the studies I've done, I've tried out like 4 or 5 different ways of doing that. And like I probably still stick to like my main favorite one for my mainline paintings. But like there's like no shortage of like solutions to that. So
yeah, I was actually starting to work on my painting before I joined this Discord. Actually, just by doing value studies, I did 3 of them, and leveled up massively on like the next piece of personal work I did after that. You know how I like, I'm fond of saying like, doing right, sort of like failing at like executing on like creative work fills your head with good questions whenever you do your next study or whatever.
Yes.
I did value studies all the time when I was just starting out, and I felt like it didn't do anything. And then I tried to paint unsuccessfully, like a lot, for like a year, then sit down to do a value study, and immediately like 10 things jump out at me, and it like hits me what I'm doing wrong. And yeah, it's just.
I'm finding more ref for future studies. Check this one out. Lighting on this thing is crazy.
Oh yeah, dappled lighting. That's always really cool. Actually, the one.
It's not just dappled lighting, but like the light fill is really strong. It's like this multi-directional light fill, so like it's flattening out all the shadow area, and then you have these like really sculpted like lit areas, and it's like falling around the eyes to like exaggerate the expression. It's really cool. I totally dig this like whole lighting setup thing, and it's gonna make it like a pain in the ass to paint. But like me doing color experiments with this as a base could be potentially very fun, very cool. Get some really weird results.
Yeah, too big brain for my smooth brain again. Like all that stuff you just pointed out about the fill lighting is like fill lighting. I don't think about this stuff ever. Like you're way more advanced.
But you know what a fill light is, right?
Yeah.
Should we go over it because I'm on stream? I don't even know how many people are watching, so I don't know if anybody cares. Hey, Dustin. Okay, let's talk about like light for just a second here. Here, I just have this popping up on from Pinterest. Okay. So like, if this woman were in outer space and she were getting sun on her face, you would see like the shadowed areas would be like really solid. And you get this in certain lighting conditions when there's very little bounce light and very little atmosphere. Like, depends on the exposure also. You can end up with these like really, really solid, like super flat shadows. Oftentimes they push almost all the way to black. But the reason we don't see that here, what we're seeing is like there's multiple like angles of light hitting this figure at the same time. And the one that's like what we're going to call the key light is really obvious. We've got this light coming in from this direction here, and you can see exactly where it's hitting because it's pinging and making these like highlights here, right? These highlights are all pointing in the same exact direction, which is exactly counter to the direction of the light that's coming down, the key light. And this is happening all over on the whole figure. And especially if like daylight, all the light rays run parallel. But if you do a shoot under a lamp, lamps are much closer to the source, and their light rays actually fan out. If you work in 3D, you actually deal with this all the time because they actually have different kinds of light emitters, ones that will fan out and shine light in a different direction across the length of a figure versus a daylight, which from the sun's so dang far away that by the time the light rays get to Earth, they all run parallel to each other. So they create this like, the direction that a subject is being lit from is really, really consistent over the length of them. So in addition to this, the reason we can see the underside of the chin is actually potentially a couple of reasons. One of them could be a fill light. You could actually have somebody squatting down on the ground to the left of her and shining a light like up this direction, and that's the lighting that we're seeing through here underneath the jawbone and under the whole underside of the jaw. All of this stuff right here, this is all fill light. And so fill light is whatever is like, you've got the part that's being lit with the big bright light, and then the fill light, you can have a bunch of them, but they are filling in the shadows to show the curvature of like what does the surface look like underneath the shadow. And then we've even got a little bit of this rim lighting here. This could be coming from the same source of like from underneath, but it might be another light altogether. So it might actually be a combination of three lights here that's producing this effect. In addition to using a light, what's also really common is just a reflector. There'll be a PA with a big piece of aluminum foil or whatever that's just standing off to the side, like holding this, so that the sunlight is like not only lighting the figure, but that some more sunlight is then bouncing back up and shining into the shadows and, sculpting the figure that much more. Because like, if you don't have all of this extra light filling in, you lose all the definition of what's happening inside there, which can be an artistic choice. One of the things I really enjoy doing is having there be a contrast between the areas that are in the key light and the areas that are in the shadow, because they create these areas that are really sculpted and three-dimensional, where you see like the turning of the form as it like the light moves across it, versus areas that are, you know, much flatter. And the contrast between those two can create a lot of interest. You know, you see this all the time when you start looking for it. Whenever someone's shooting either still photography or in movies, you get this like dynamic balance between these areas that are flatter versus more curved, based on, you know, what are the relative lighting conditions over different portions of the figure. You know, you can see here in this portrait, another one I just downloaded from Pinterest for a future study, that we get all of this turning of the form across this side of the face, where we can see like the cheekbone and everything turning very obviously. And then in the shadowed side, it's not flat, but it is flatter. And so we end up with this much, you know, these much flatter areas on this side of the face. And then that's being, to counteract the flatness of that, we're getting a little bit of definition for what this figure looks like based off of this rim light that's coming in across the side of the face and the neck to help. And like, that's not just there because light is a thing that happens in a scene. Like, you have to be getting some light into your camera if you're going to point a camera at somebody. Like, the whole point of it is that you're supposed to be controlling where all this stuff is landing, so that you have, you're creating areas that are, you know, visually different from each other. Sculpting the form, not through physical sculpting and not through painting, but just through the clever positioning of lights and models and cameras, which is, you know, the large challenge of photography. But it's the same set of knowledge that we need to know as a painter. So I find that most painters reuse a lot of the same nomenclature that you get in film and photography, just because like it's the exact same ideas. And yeah, and then it gives us a common understanding for talking about these things. I definitely think this is daylight because of how tight the shadow edge is here. Seeing that really tight shadow edge, to me, says that we're seeing like a really strong light. So we're seeing is the projection of the jawline, projecting the shadow down across the neck. But yeah, inside this reference photo I was just talking about, you know, the thing that's interesting to me about it is you have like the area that's like being filled in, that's like not being hit by this key light. There's so much of this key light that's being obscured by like some sort of mesh or like something that's like blocking it, that like we have a huge portion of the figure is falling into shadow, but that shadow is also being illuminated from like a really soft source. So instead of seeing a lot of hard shadows or cast shadows, we're seeing almost no shadowing at all, just these subtle differences, you know, as like light gets trapped in the corners where we have these like larger turns. And like that soft skylight look can often be really appealing. So mixing that with like the really hard shapes like inside the mouth and in the eyes, like you have this really, really interesting pattern of like light and dark that I've building on top of like the expression that the model's got going on here. It's really striking. So that's going to be a fun experiment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, there's like a lot of stuff involved in lighting that like I don't even think, like, for me it's like just a struggle to like ray trace, to try to like figure out separating like light from shadow and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like you think about one aspect of it at a time. Like, that's the trick. It's like you can't hold an entire ray traced model in your mind at once. So like if you're going to paint, and plenty of people have pulled it off, the trick is trying to solve one problem of the light at a time. And so
Actually, I was about to say, when dappled lighting came up, probably my most successful painting I actually did like 3 years ago, like quite a while ago.
yeah.
And what I did was just what you said, like one light source at a time. Like I started by putting in the ambient light, and then I like added some, you know, some like dappled lighting. It's like, oh wow, this looks really pro. And then I like never did it that way again.
Yeah, I mean, one of the solutions to figuring out the lighting in a scene is to literally just draw one light at a time. But oftentimes what I do is I start off with something that's like more general and kind of sculptural lighting. The whole thing where it's just like, there's the darker parts because they're like, it's just more ambiently lit. The darker parts are receding into shadow, while the stuff that's like more open and on top is getting more light. And then I usually don't end up drawing in cast shadows until kind of later in the process, because it's hard to hold all those ideas in my mind at the same time. So what I might do part of the way through something like this and just go like, you know what? This is all kind of flat. It's like too much of the same texture, too much. I need some variation in here. And so I might throw a cast shadow over a portion of it. And to build a cast shadow, what I'm doing is I'm going to take a darker color and just, glaze it over an area. Like, that's obvious. But what I also need to do if something is in shadow is I need to make sure that I'm preserving those that ambient occlusion inside the tighter bits, and that I am I'm not turning the form too much inside the shadow, because like it's only getting a little bit of fill light, and so it's going to be much flatter. You can get away with like something feeling lit or shadowed almost entirely off of how much the form kind of turns. So if there's like variation of like the light is sort of dissipating over the length of a form, then it's like, okay, well, that's got to be in light because the lighting conditions are changing over the length of it. While if you have an area that is like largely flat and the same color, your brain's going to be like, oh, that's got to be shadow, because that's, even though there's like probably a lot of convoluted curves in there, we're just seeing basically the same flat color. And, that's like, it's a shorthand we can use in painting, but it's more importantly a shorthand that our brains are going to be doing. And the brains of the viewer is going to be doing that as well, even if they don't consciously understand that like lit areas tend to have like a change over the surface while shadowed areas tend to be flatter. Like, they're going to understand that intuitively simply by looking at it. So it's like a lot of the pursuit of learning to paint is making conscious what we already understand subconsciously.
Okay.
There's a finite amount of that stuff you ever need to learn in order to get like acceptably good at it. It's really not like a year's worth of intense study learning like how to build a ray tracing model in your head. It really is just like I think a handful of tricks combined with a little bit of elbow grease, like so that you can like find opportunities to experiment with it and try it out on your own piece, or like make a correction to a piece you already have in progress, and like then you're good. Then you're golden. You're golden for good.
Yeah, I mean, it really is something I should figure out, if for no other reason than I think being better at painting would actually improve my drawings.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, painting definitely is a great way of like selling a drawing. When you can do a good paint job over a mediocre drawing, people are gonna treat it as though it's a better drawing. even if you're like the same level of drawing, if you can like paint really good over the top of it. I'm convinced that's part of the reason why AI gets away with so much stuff, is like the rendering, like the finish of it looks like really like accurate, but then you look at it and you're like the anatomy on here sucks. Like, but the anatomy doesn't read as sucking because the lighting looks consistent. But the more time you spend with it, the more you realize the lighting's not even consistent.
It has good composition, great shape design, great values, and nothing else.
Yeah, well, it's consistent in its aesthetic.
Yeah.
Like, it'll nail like the overall like shape language and like value language of like an aesthetic, but it doesn't actually understand anything like anatomy or design, so it won't reproduce any of that stuff with any level of proficiency.
Yeah.
So you can do the same. My point is that you can do the same thing. Like, if you can just get a handle on what the aesthetic of lighting looks like, You don't need to be like holding anything complex in your mind in order to be able to turn it into something that feels like a
Okay, I get what you're saying.
yeah. So like it's the AI is bullshitting in the same way that, I mean, like a painter bullshits also. Like some of the stuff is just made up, inaccurate for the sake of it looking right or feeling right or being like your vision. Like there are some people who are really, really good at creating work that is like an excellent simulation of real light and cloth and anatomy and all that stuff. I've never been that guy. I think part of the reason why my work is popular is because I take extensive liberties with those sorts of things for the sake of achieving an aesthetic that I enjoy. And like the definition of a style and aesthetic is that you're doing it incorrectly.
Okay, yeah. There's lots of things in art. Perspectives actually like that. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be accurate.
Famously, that the Studio Ghibli movies have terrible perspective.
Okay, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, there's like a lot of situations where if you go and you take a Studio Ghibli background plate and you break it down, you'll discover that the perspective is done horribly wrong for the sake of making the scene feel correct.
Okay.
I've seen instances of this where people put together threads where they're like, actually, if the camera was positioned here, then like the perspective would be like this, and all of the view of this classroom would be totally different. But yeah, it like that's not the point. The point is not to be perfectly accurate with it all the time. The point is to try to create the impression of the thing according to the artist's vision, which sometimes means doing it realistically and sometimes means doing it unrealistically for the sake of a creative vision.
Yeah, totally.
Knowing the difference
the better
probably helps.
The better I get at drawing, I don't know, maybe I'm just going through a phase, and maybe this is like one of those like placebo totems that like artists are so fond of, but like I feel like I'm discovering more and more that like just having good shapes like really carries a drawing, and like you don't actually need to have the most accurate like structure and everything, just as long as it has kind of a cool flow to it.
Yes, having a cool flow to it is like the first thing I do when I'm coming up with an idea for painting, and
Yeah, me
the
too.
rest of the process is trying to preserve that cool flow, not ruin it.
Yep. Yeah, that Taylor Payton mentorship you did, I've watched it like 17 times or something
Oh, really?
ridiculous. Because it's a gold mine of like that kind of advice. Like, how do you like not lose what was cool about your thumbnail? Like he was having massive problems with that.
I mean, we were looking at that yesterday in the portfolio reviews. That one guy who was doing the horror work, it was like, he was making really bold changes to his thumbnails, and I'm like, I like these thumbnails. Like, it's your prerogative to make changes if you want to, if it's your art. But like, there is something potentially very powerful about maintaining that original expression that happens early on. That's part of the reason I still work in pencil, is because I find a lot of like value in that stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I find whenever I make changes late into something, it gets messy and it gets stiff simultaneously somehow. You'd figure messy things wouldn't be stiff, yet somehow.
The worst of both worlds.
Yeah.
I'm finding more fashion photos for future studies. Total mood. Oh, maybe I should draw some guys on occasion too. Wait, where'd he go? Ugh, it's dumping me out to the. I don't want to buy these shirts. I just want to paint them. God damn it. Pinterest.
Yeah, happens on Pinterest all the time. You like click on one thing, like, oh, that's a cool thing. It's like, oh no, it wasn't that.
Yeah. They're like, would you like to spend $110 on this blouse? And I'm like, no.
Put me back.
Just let me throw out my reference folder and be done with you. Yeah, I'm looking through Pinterest right now and trying to find more good references to draw, because I'm like, I'm burning through one a day. I always feel like I'm churning them up.
So there's a piece of advice you give all the time that you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
a minute ago about leaning into like stuff that you're good at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I think I disagree with that advice a little bit.
Yeah.
And like the reason is like if like like right now you would probably tell me to like lean into drawing because like that's what I'm better at or
Well,
whatever.
I just told you that I want to see what happens if you lean into painting.
Yeah, yeah, but like when I was starting out, I leaned more into painting.
Uh-huh.
And just like swapping over to anime kind of like forced me to do more drawing, and then I got it into my head that I wanted to be like a pen artist for a while, and like that enforced really good draftsmanship habits, and like one thing led to another, and now my draftsmanship skills are like way ahead of my painting skills. So I feel like if you just spend more time with stuff you're bad at, it can become the stuff you're good at.
Right. The reason I give the advice, it's like there's a bunch of advice that I give that is not because it's the right choice most of the time, but because it's the kind of, I'm taking the counter position to what is common wisdom.
Okay.
So like everyone's always like, well, you got to get good at the things that you're bad at. You have to learn some skills, even if it's not your favorite thing. You don't know all these things. You got to be learning new things, and like that's not really advice because everyone is going to naturally drift in that direction anyway. Like that, I feel like is people's natural impulse is to say, I should learn more, I should work harder, I should strengthen my weaknesses. My reason for saying you should make art that is dumb and easy and obvious, that's like simple for you, is because it pushes people to balance out their impulses. The goal being to like have people sometimes like if you're going to make your very best work, you need to like show the peaks of your strengths. And like if somebody's like been spending all their time in a study hole and they're never actually making iconic work that is original and from them that shows off their very best skills, like it kind of doesn't matter if they have those skills if no one realizes that they exist. The advice of like draw what you're really good at is in part to help people to build portfolio work that is going to affect the opportunities that they get. Job offers, print sales, those kinds of things. And it's like there's already enough of advice for the, counter argument. So I'm always gonna like be inspired to like push people in the direction that like they're not already going to be heading in naturally. Because like I could just give advice to people that is the thing that they already truly believe or the thing that they're naturally inclined to believe over and over and over again. And like that's a really easy path to like having people listen to you is because they go like, damn, this guy knows everything. Like
It turns my worldview to me on a regular basis.
Yeah, like I once heard Seth Godin, he's like a marketing guru guy. He's saying if you want people to read your blog, just write things that they already agree with. And I'm like, oh god damn, that's diabolical. Here I am trying to like get people to expand their thinking, and to do that, I need to tell them things that they disagree with, which is like, of course, the way harder thing to try to say something like, I'm going to tell you something you're not going to agree with now, but if you try it out, or if you trust me, or if like you go along with it long enough, you will discover that I am right and your previous self was wrong, and now like your worldview has been expanded. And I love that challenge. So I always want to take, like, if there's something that is counterintuitive that people broadly disagree with that I feel like has real merit, I'm going to try to make the most forceful pitch I can for it in an effort to, like, make that, get that prestige of being able to, like, change someone's mind. And so like I'm inclined to do that over and over again, like more so than just say things that people agree with. But I'm like also being more conscious of like how I come across these days, and so I'm like I'm gonna mix it in more, some like basic shit like people already are going to agree with me on, and they're gonna nod along with me, and it's gonna be Like, and then it's going to be a lot easier. I'll still go and be like completely contrarian about some things, especially the ones I think are important. But I'm gonna mix it up instead of just being like difficult all the time. So, yeah, no, I understand. Like, if there's anything that's true, the opposite's probably also true to some measure. You know, you're like, oh, I don't agree with it. You should always try to draw stuff that you're good at, or use skills that you're already strong in. It's like, yeah, both are true. You should do both. Like, everyone should do both, obviously.
Okay.
And more, and then even more so, for some people it's going to be very true that they should do one of those things, and for a different person it's going to be very, very true that they should do the opposite. And I'm not in the room with most people most of the time. You are watching me have a conversation with a different person and then trying to figure out how it applied to you. You know, which one of those is right for you? That's up to your prejudices, and I can't get in the middle of that conversation because I'm like, I'm in a different country. You know, we're not on a call. We're just like, you're just watching me on a screen. How am I supposed to know what you need? So, like, there's a fit. What the fuck? Oh, man. This thing looks like as soon as you move your elbows, it like pulls up over your head.
Yeah, I don't know. I keep seeing like contemporary fashion and being like, man, they really should just hire some like video game concept artists.
No, I hate the video game concept art. I like the fashion designer stuff way more than I like the video game fashion stuff. Like, I think video game designers need to be looking at way more actual design.
Okay.
But every once in a while, something pops out that looks just like a piece of concept art and that somebody made out of cloth, and I'm just like, yeah, you could do it on a 3D model, but like on a person, there's like no way this thing's going to work. Also, for $200, guarantee you this thing is like a crazy size and made out of trash. Like, there's like a totally nuts thing. Oh yeah, I'm starting to realize that more than 5 years ago, everything on Pinterest was just like cool photos, and now it's like a shopping guide. I'm like, I don't know how much that's changed, or maybe I've just been falling into different holes in it, but I liked it when it was just weird artsy photos. Oh, I don't even know if I should be scrolling on here, but it could be TOS. Oh, gained some clipping. I'm shouting too much in the mic. Turn the gain down a little bit. All right. But yeah, no, I love taking the counterintuitive position on stuff. It's so fun. Just tell people something that they're like, no, that can't be right, and then like bait them into wanting to believe it is right.
It makes you stand out more too. Like, your advice is always like memorable. Like,
I hope so.
Okay, yeah, I guess I understand better.
Yeah, there's so often, like, if there's an opinion that like most people have that is identical across the whole industry, I'm going to look for a take that runs exactly opposite of it, and I'm going to try to find a good, justified, wholesome version of that take so that I can say, ultimately be arguing for balance by trying to argue for something that is like totally opposite of what is understood, and like, you know, common sense, probably right, mostly true, but like the truth is always a balance of things, and so there's like always real value in finding like what the opposite opinion might be.
Oh, that's actually kind of why I argue against studies so much. Like, whenever people are like bringing up studies and things, it's just because I feel like the common wisdom is like, you need to do anatomy studies all the time and stuff.
Oh, yeah. And like, I've been out here, people are like, oh, so you do anatomy studies? I'm like, nope, never.
Yep.
How'd you learn anatomy? I don't know. Lots of bad drawings, I guess.
Yep.
And it pisses some people off. Like, that is not a way to make friends with people who like really love art and value, you know, academic study and really care about, you know, making great art. The idea that you just be like throw that in their face and be like, none of it's necessary is like, both perspectives have truth in them, but that is not like that's not a friendly attitude. Even if you're just like, yeah, for me, I never studied. It just sounds like you're being an asshole, is what I realized over time. Yeah.
My sister made a YouTube video called "The Cult of Anatomy Studies." Yeah,
It's true though. I mean, I like now I'm finding myself, if I'm talking to somebody who does nothing but studies, I'm like, you've got to do some original stuff to like apply the stuff in the studies. It's you got to see like where you are. There's so much value in that. And then if somebody doesn't do any studies, I'm like, oh my God, can you imagine what would happen if you were to study and then try to apply this back to the drawings you're already doing? And so like I'm just taking the opposite of whatever the person I'm talking to is into and trying to like sell them that rather than taking like the opposite of the popular opinion. I'm just like, I want to be introducing new ideas to people all the time. And so like I'm just picking the counter position of whoever I'm talking to.
So I'm like against it. Is that why?
What?
Is that why you're telling me I should paint? Is because I'm like gung ho about the idea of just
maybe that's a good insight. Yeah, possibly. There's a very real possibility that is the reason I'm telling you to paint, is because you're like, I think you're right. I don't think I need painting, and I'm like, no, I'm double right because you really do need painting.
Yeah, I don't know. They're like, oh God, one of the things that's annoying about doing anime is nobody agrees on what anime even is. Like, so there's no objective, like, right way to, like, go about, I don't know, just, like, finishing things and, like, stylizing them and whatnot. So I, like, flip-flop schizophrenically between a whole bunch of different styles and things. And I never, like, pick one and pursue it. So, like, right now I'm trying to, like, ape Hamsung Chul as much as possible. But, like, if things keep going like they've been going, I'll be, like, I'll pursue it for, like, a couple weeks. And then I'll be like, no, I wanna paint, like, Aoin Hatsu, and like I'll just I feel like nothing's like a waste when you're like doing art though. Like if you just like dabble in one thing for a while, it like sticks to you to some degree. And
one of the painters I was always trying to imitate was Yoshiyuki Sadamoto. Did like promo art for Evangelion, and I think it was like in watercolors. But it's got this like acrylic look. It's got this like chunky, brushy thing mixed with like the really bold shapes of the line art. I always really like that.
What's the guy's name?
Yoshiyuki Sadamoto. Yoshiyuki Sadamoto. And he also does like tons of like wild perspective stuff too. So that's always fun.
Oh, that is fun. Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I've seen the guy's art, didn't know his name. Yeah, this is dope. I love like ink and watercolor looking anime.
It doesn't go too hard. Oh, this looks like it's done digitally too. It doesn't go too hard into rendering every inch of it. Like it has that kind of overlit look that like anime kind of needs to not have the faces turn into nightmare fuel, you know?
Yep.
But he does it across other parts too. So there's like a real balance between like the flatter and the more rendered areas. Like I was saying, like, oh, with light and shadow, you have to pick where you're going to be rendered and where you're going to be flat. But like you can kind of do that arbitrarily based off of any kind of thing. And you know, you can have it be blown out colors. You can have it be shadows. You can have it like just decide to not render it because it's an anime face and it looks weird if you do too much rendering on it. And like, and like that like subtle balance of like choosing where to put the rendering and where not to, I always thought was like a really, really cool look. It looks 90s as hell. I'm like so into that. There's something about the datedness of it now that to me is like totally, you know, looking cool. But like you still need to be able to like, you know, do rendering or whatever to like blend between two colors like smoothly in some parts and then choose to like carve a harder edge in other places. So it's like you're still doing painting. It's just like there's a certain amount of discretion built into it. That could be a really cool look for what you're going for. Because, like, you know, you tend to sort of, like, just put lines all over the dang place. And, like, you know, it might be interesting to see if you were to be really selective about how you do, like, the painting process. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's so much harder to be selective than it is to just do the same thing all over the whole canvas.
Yeah, that's something I've sort of been noticing lately about a whole bunch of things. I need to edit my designs down a little bit more. Whenever I do paintings, like whenever I do speed paintings, I'm usually decently happy with the drawing, but I'm not happy with the rendering work I did. But I was actually, when I was doing them every day, I was improving a little bit, and I was actually improving by doing less. Like, I think the problem was I was, like, trying to, like, blend too much in my, like, speed paintings, and as soon as I started just, like, slowing down and thinking for a minute about, like, what, like, how do I, like, make this look painted with, like, fewer brush strokes? Just, like, letting myself just, like, stop, like, after not that long, I was getting better results.
Yeah. Like, how do you both be ambitious to build in, like, to do the most painting that you can? Like, you don't want to be lazy, right? You want to like be ambitious to try to finish the painting all the way and do your absolute best, but also not overwork it and make it look lame and, like, samey all over the canvas. Like, how do you practice both ambition and discretion simultaneously in a single painting?
I haven't figured it out.
I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know why you're asking me.
I'm not. I'm asking the universe because I don't know the answer either. I'm finding that over time, it's just, like, easier to just, like, render the shit out of everything.
Oh God.
And, like, the times I can catch myself and, like, make good, interesting choices about having discretion, it's, like, always feels like I'm being handed some sort of, like, wisdom from the universe. But it's so hard to be my best self when it comes to making that choice. Like, it's so much easier to just be like, oh, it doesn't look done, I should render it more.
There's some anime artists who are great at this, like, just putting down some rough brush strokes and being, like, very selective about it. It looks like maybe they painted it in, like, 5 seconds, but, like, I'm sure they were, like, thinking really hard about it the whole time.
Yeah.
It's totally, like, arcane to me. Like, I have no idea how people are doing it.
Well, and this is what I'm trying to explore with the studies, is, like, doing them and then thinking about, like, hey, how am I approaching this? I mean, it's like, I don't need to come up with the creative part. It's like a photo. So when it comes to all the other choices, you know, it's a open canvas for me to explore them, you know, with controls in place. That's why I've had such a blast working on them, is because, like, it's a laboratory, and, like, I get to pop into the lab every single day and try to figure out these questions that have been hanging over my head for years, and, like, there's absolutely no way to fuck it up. I mean, I could waste my time, I guess. I could just do a version of it that's, like, you know, not at all creative and not really think about how I'm working, and, you know, spend 2 hours and I get nothing but a JPEG I can barely call my own at the end. All right, whatever. That's, like, not the worst punishment in the world, especially because I've always had fun, at least, like, hanging out and making them. So I don't know. It's like these are really difficult questions, and there's not, like, singular answers to them. So I feel like if we're going to bother bringing them up, we should bother trying to answer them.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's what we're doing every day. Well,
Well, I mean, sometimes I've been kind of lazy about it for many years now. I feel like now I'm getting interested again, and I want to answer these questions better. And I think like, if I can do that, I think I could, like, have a new like, what do you call it, like, era to my work. Like I could level up past where I've been at for a really long time if I can, be serious about the questions I'm asking again instead of assuming that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because I presume I know how to paint. I presumed I know how to paint for a long time. But I also haven't gotten that much better at painting over that period of time.
This reminds me, one of the downsides of doing client work for me is it incentivizes playing everything safe and not experimenting. Because everything I do has like a particular look and like style of finish to it, right? So I figure that's what the client wants, and like I never want to just like mess around.
Yeah.
And it's actually, I feel like it's stunted my growth this like past year a little bit. Like I'm doing personal work and I'm experimenting with like finishing it in a way that I've always wanted to finish it, but I don't dare do it for client work. I wonder if I don't know, like maybe the reason why I feel like I haven't improved at painting like this past year is just like not experimenting enough.
Yeah. I am curious what happens if you were to, because I was talking about all this stuff with lighting and photography and like sculpting the form with like choosing where the lights land and stuff. You could get on top of that stuff within a month. Like you're building on top of a pretty broad foundation already. This isn't blowing your mind. It's not the first time you've heard of these things. So
yeah.
I don't know. I'm curious. Try. If you're on here at the same time every day, if you're free around this time, come and hang out during this time and do some photo studies and anything that's coming to your mind. Talk to me about it. This makes for content for me.
All right.
Because having conversations that are on topic that aren't talking about food or weightlifting or whatever during an art stream is excellent. I'm very happy about it. And then Dustin's over here. He's happy because he's clipping these things to upload as YouTube content. So any kind of really good art conversations that we can have on Discord during these daily sessions is free content from me. And then if you want to learn this stuff, you're gonna have to put some time in on it either way.
Yeah.
But if you do it on here, then you got access to me.
My plan for the next little while is to just make some portfolio pieces.
Yeah.
And experiment a little bit. So I guess I could just experiment with rendering them in various ways.
Yeah, if you wanted to get into, we talked a little bit about monetization earlier. If you wanted to get into monetization at all, you're gonna have to figure out a way to finish stuff in a way that looks finished to other people. It's not just useful as concept art, but something that feels a little bit more illustration-like.
Yep. A weakness of mine too is I don't really do backgrounds, and I'm not very strong with composition. So a problem I have is everybody's thumbnails look better than mine.
Everybody's.
Yeah. Even
you're I went to a kindergarten and the kindergartners were all doing better thumbnails than me, and then they saw my thumbnail and they weren't really good at speaking, but they were making this raspberry noise and giving me a thumbs down
yeah.
Fucking kindergartners are brutal.
Pretty much. If you zoom in on my stuff, it looks all right. But if you look at it on a wall on Instagram or whatever as a square, it's man, mine just has a white background and you can't even see all the little details I made, I
don't know.
So it'd be nice if I
I don't know what you're going on about. you need to draw some backgrounds or something, probably. Or you draw a cool character with some clouds behind him or something. People get away with that every day.
Yeah, I was doing some studies of this JRPG that I forget the name of. JRPG names all sound the same. They're all Adelestria.
Yeah, Defiant of Eladestria or something. You're that's these guys. These guys did all take English class in high school. I don't know what their problem is.
Art's cool though. But yeah, it was just okay, this is rendered in a way where like the drawing is carrying it, and I can see myself doing something like this. And it has like interesting full compositions. So like, why don't I do some studies of this stuff? And I don't know. I picked up a few things, but like, man, I struggle so hard whenever I have to like, I don't know, do a background for things. The Hamsung Chul guy I really like. He usually just puts like weird tarot card kind of borders around.
Oh yeah,
Like, stuff.
yeah.
Maybe I could do that.
Um,
Because that I actually like doing. Like if I have to do like a bunch of symmetrical, weird filigree designs, like that's no problem. But
yeah, I'm just trying to think of like who do I know that's like it might be worth it to just like look into what people in the same market as you are doing. Like who out there is doing a bunch of anime art that they're taking to conventions, and like what do those prints look like, you know? And is there like a path to that is like a background that you could see yourself doing that's not a huge pain in the ass that you could like pull off and put your guys in, and then you don't need to worry about, you know, building whole huge multi-figure compositions where like everyone is like up to like a specific action. There's tons of architecture in the background. Like I don't know if you noticed, but like there's no buildings in any of my paintings because I suck at drawing buildings. Like there's occasionally like a building, but there's no sense of like scale or anything. I'm not like putting figures like surrounded by architecture that's in perspective. Like I'm just skipping around all the stuff I'm bad at. Like
scale is so hard. It's like the hardest thing about doing like illustrations.
It can be tough. But like you can skip over a tremendous amount of stuff that you don't want to do just by being a little picky about how you what kinds of illustrations you make. You really there's no format you need to embrace, but it's tough to sell drawings of guys on a white background. I'm trying to think, is that true? I'm saying it out loud and I'm like questioning myself instantly.
I don't think so. If you can do a very attractive woman on a white background, then you'll sell.
You think so?
Oh, I know so.
It's just a
actually,
hot anime babe on a white background. It's good enough.
It's like very erotic stuff. I mean, like that kind of stuff.
Jazz, you gonna get into NSFW art?
I was actually thinking about doing that at one point. I kind of, I don't know. I did like one pinup and like kind of realized I was getting obsessed with like designing the details on the girls' like lingerie and stuff, and I was like, okay, I'm more of like a fashion person than like.
Well, jazz, that's what people love too. You know, if you give them like, not necessarily like make them like, oh, she has the best curves or like the biggest boobs or this and that, right? But like if you give her really good clothing too, like or lingerie or stuff like that, people are very attracted to that. That's a big supply.
Okay. Because literally the feedback I got was like, boo, she's not naked enough. Make her nakeder.
That's the wrong audience, bro.
You can make whatever you want.
They're like, oh my gosh, that lace you put on her? Hot. God damn.
I'm convinced you could make it whatever format you want, but like you gotta just make certain accommodations for productizing it to some degree. Like the main creative part of the work can just be the thing you actually want. In most cases, like I think that most people can just like keep doing the part that they really care about, and then there's often some very small amount of concessions needed to like turn it into a product. Like, you know, sometimes it's just cropping, sometimes it's like having to draw a background for something. Originally, I was just like mainly into character designs, and so I was just doing the characters on an empty background. Like going into the Angelarium archive here. Like I didn't know how to draw backgrounds at first, so I was mostly just doing like empty kind of like, you know, what they do with the photo studio with the rolled corner. I was basically just trying to emulate that by having these like sort of empty color fields that were designed to like create a background. And in some cases I was like, well, maybe it should be like, I didn't know how to paint clouds, so I was like, maybe it should be like, it's a color field, but it's kind of cloud shaped. And tried to
Yeah.
experiment into like maybe it's like just an empty space, but it's also full of cloth, but like still sucking at drawing cloth. But like over time, it's just like repeating that. It got a lot easier. Like pretty quickly, it got easier to start to just add a couple more elements, and
Man,
and like widen the language up.
The
Yeah.
design on that dude with like the cloth background actually like still kind of holds up, but the cloth background is like so bad and so busy it like really just detracts from it. Like it just like the cloth background just made it worse.
Oh yeah, the cloth background is like really distracting. It's like if this guy was on an empty color background, it would have been a better piece.
Yeah. Yeah, he'd be
Um,
kind of cool if he were just like a silhouette.
What are we looking for?
White.
Oh, sorry, I don't have the screen share going on the. I have it on my Twitch stream. I'll go live here too. All right,
See this?
and then when I went back to him, I was like, I'm gonna put him on a actual background.
Yeah.
So like, there's some pretty big design difference as well. Like I changed the like totally nonsensical wings that I drew out of my head without any knowledge of how wings actually worked, and changed them to being made out of like big sheets of paper instead. And then I also like I did decide I didn't really want a figure underneath the thing, so I took away all the parts where skin was showing, and I wanted to have like the layered plates making up a mask, but I ended up making something that was more like the front of a you know, like an aircraft, like sort of a nose of an airplane, more so than like, you know, a person wearing thing. Like pointy ears, definitely not the right choice, I think. And then it was like it was just like a lot of taking the same ideas and trying to figure out ways of like, instead of a pointed shoulder, giving him like these weird like cloth pauldrons. But
There's a big difference. I can mainly feel it. It feels there's more like of a story on the one on the left, I feel.
yeah, and then, you know, it's set like at this point I had done a lot of backgrounds, and so it's like drawing clouds free. They're just free. I can throw clouds in anywhere, and I basically just make an abstract pattern and then I cloudify it. I just run like the cloud filter on it, and it's done. And so I only need to like plan out maybe like one other element. Like, oh, I'll throw some twisty tree roots, which if you have in your visual library is also like free. You don't need to look up reference. You just like draw a bunch of tentacles to make them vaguely wood textured. And then like, you know, it's all freebies, and so then, you know, it's basically just a character design with some sort of freebie organic elements that don't require like a lot of consideration or planning. And there's not even like a terribly consistent horizon line that like affects the character. It's like very little needed in terms of establishing perspective, or like doing any of the things that I'm bad at. But like the flow of the composition, like just having a compositional flow that works in the abstract from the beginning means that like all I need to do is spend a few extra cycles like turning those abstractions into a thing that is like easy to paint without reference, and it's like a free background, basically a color field, but just enough ahead of a color field to like let people's imaginations enter into it and add something that like feels more like they then fill all the ambiguity in with their own ideas, and that's where like a little bit of the ambiguity like goes a long way. And now I'm like I've done that so many times. I've been trying to go a little further with it. So now like now I'm trying to actually do figures that like are doing specific actions in more specific locations with like more elements in them, and some of the elements interacting, like cloth like cascading downstairs and stuff.
Oh wow, that was just lovely.
That shit is all way harder.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at it. I'm like,
I think you could go from like this to this over the course of a few years if you were to just focus on studying those things in specific. But I've like fed them into my body of work rather slowly over a very long period of time. So like I've always felt like a total idiot like the whole time, because I'm like I'm just only introducing like a few new ideas or a few new challenges, like very, very slowly, and just being very safe and creeping forward all the time. But yeah, I'm realizing that like it's possible to just be a little bit more ambitious with like learning new ideas and like develop faster. That's definitely what I was doing when I was like first learning. I was learning really fast. But
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, I'm looking forward to challenging myself a little bit more going forwards.
Fabric just like rolling downstairs is just so lovely to look at.
Yeah, but it's hard as shit to draw.
Oh yeah. It's very difficult. Very difficult.
Yeah, actually, the thing you were showing with like the just some random colors on your like early designs that like gradually evolved into like cloudscapes and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually kind of what I've been doing. I've been kind of thinking, right, like, damn, my thumbnails always look so bad on DeviantArt next to like everyone else's because it's just on a white background or whatever. How do I like put something in the background that doesn't eat up too much of my time, that like makes the character look a little bit better at a distance, as like a square on like the, browsing tab or whatever. Yeah, one of the things I tried is just like color fields, like
But yeah, you
pick a
can
color that's
turn the
really
color
common.
fields into like a cloudscape without having to go too crazy.
You know,
God.
I feel
There's,
as artists, a lot of the time we put such a big emphasis on like the character rather than the entire piece as a whole. Like sometimes I feel like instead of like putting in all this time into like just like, oh, I want to get this character looking amazing, amazing. But if we can evenly distribute that throughout the entire piece, not necessarily to like make everything as rendered as the your focal point, but just give it that extra touch to make it just a step further.
Yeah, the thing I'm working on right now is this like princess who's like walking towards you with a sword and shield, and she has like a pet dragon that's kind of like walking around behind her, but the dragon's kind of chill. And the dragon's like kind of a neat element. I keep doing this thing where like I'll draw some characters together that look like they should be in a scene, and what I want to do is like draw a castle interior, but like that's too hard. So like,
You're like, I can't draw a castle interior. I guess they're just going to be walking through a void again.
yep.
Can you bring up your thing? Can I take a look?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. Right. This is where it's at right now. I'm on the sort of line art phase.
Oh, this is nice.
The sketch looks really messy because I had to edit it a lot after the fact. There were some like proportional issues and things that I'm
Yeah.
not sure I 100% fixed, but whatever, close enough.
I'm popping this out onto the Twitch, if you don't mind.
All right, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
This is the sketch. The line art is like,
All right. So
Yes.
you're like, oh, what if this was a castle interior?
yeah.
The dumbest trick ever is that you just put them on a cliff so you can draw a big cloudscape behind them. Like, the more that you can get your characters to stand on a pointy rock, the less shit you need to draw in perspective behind them. It's so good. Yeah, drawing a whole castle interior that's like in perspective, that you've already established for this figure, that's also interesting, that also like compositionally complements it. Yeah, good luck. I'm always just, to me, like my first step to building a background is just to like lay in a bunch of random like value blocks. Just like take a big brush and just try out some big sweeping diagonal lines or zigzags or like S curves that go like it, behind the figure, to try to see like, can I like exaggerate like the motion of the figure, or like help establish the perspective of the figure or whatever, just in totally in the abstract. And then it's a matter of trying to figure out if I can justify those shapes in a form that like creates some sort of background. So I think it's really tough to start with like the concept of what it is, where you're like, I want a castle interior. it's almost easier to start off with. I heard a blip. Was that? Oh, thank you, Kumquatius, for the T1 sub. That's awesome. It's like it's easier to start off with an abstract background that you know is already going to like suit the figure, and then figure out like how do you construct that into a background that makes sense, rather than like start with the conclusion that there's supposed to be a carpet and windows and like bricks and all that, because then like at some point you need to turn that into a composition after you've already worked out all the perspective and arranged things in a way that feels believable and stuff. I think it's easier. I think it's like more effective to start from the abstract, because then like, you know, you have this open question you need answered, which is a problem. It's like, it's difficult, but like so long as it can stay within the framework of the abstract background, it's never going to make the piece look bad. You know, like you at a certain point, it just needs to like this is the thing like we were talking about AI's good at, where it just bullshits. Like it'll just take like whatever random, you know, smear of color, and it's able to make it feel like a photo or a drawing or whatever. Like the actual surface detail of it, like it could do whatever. It's just that it always starts with this blurry mess and then slowly resolves it into whatever style it's looking for. We have the same capacity. So I think if you're thinking about a background, you know, you make something abstract and see what you can do with it. You can also do a vignette if you want to, if that's more comfortable. I always found those to be kind of a pain, but you know how they always do in RPGs where they have like the little bit of floating thing. So
yeah, I love that kind of thing. Actually, I do it all the time.
Yeah, so I mean that's a real solution as well. If you want a full frame, full color thing, then like I know why you want it, because it feels more finished, more complete. It like makes a bolder thumbnail when you see it in a grid with a bunch of other art, you know.
Yeah.
The same is true like at a convention when you have them all lined up in a row. I found that like they need to all feel like they're filling the whole page. Like, and not every artist does that, but it's like
the this Samsung Chul guy does the like vignette thing, although I suddenly can't find any examples as I scroll around. Like he'll do this, like there'll be like a weird symmetrical thing in the background, and maybe the characters will be standing on some kind of cool sculpture.
It's quite the plinth you got there.
Yeah, or there'll be like a mausoleum behind. Like I've seen him do that before. Maybe I could do something like that, or there'll be like a weird frame with flowers growing out of it.
Oh, and that's like a montage shot. I mean, that's like tons of people.
Yeah, he'll do this with like just characters though. Sometimes, like.
Can you do that? Are you good at drawing tons of characters in a scene together? Like, even in like a montage, like, or collage.
I've always wanted to do it, but it's like intimidating. I've tried once because somebody commissioned me to do like a fight scene with several characters.
Same.
And I didn't like it.
Yep.
But Ash said it was pretty good. So
well, Ash knows. Ash knows what they're talking about.
Ash knows.
So.
And I got a bunch of commissions after doing it because people were like, "Whoa, you can draw like tons of characters in a scene together fighting? What the hell? Almost no one can do that."
So like what I'm thinking is like if you were to like take popular IPs and just do the anime fantasy version of them where it's a big cast photo, it's like a big collage piece, those will sell day and night. Be like, "Oh, it's actually like, I don't know, what's popular that's not anime and fantasy?" Barbie. If you were to do like the fantasy anime version of Barbie where it's like, you know, a bunch of characters and stuff from there and they're all in like cool anime poses and dressed up as like knights and wizards and stuff, and then do like a cool Barbie color palette and like turn it into one of these movie poster style images, you got yourself a fucking instant paycheck like from the universe. Like people will buy it on Displate and people will buy it at conventions, and like that would absolutely move. Might be a fun challenge. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely need like at least like a few months of like practicing like movie poster style stuff. But it is something I've always wanted to do anyway.
If there's
So
something you
like,
want to do anyway, I'm not throwing this at you as like, hey, this is what you should do. I'm just saying like, if that's something you would want to do anyway, that's a moneymaker.
no, I love this kind of thing. Like this image here, I have tons of images like this saved
Oh.
where like it's uh
Like some of the people I know that have really really strong brands, like what they do is they just do that sort of thing where they're like, I'm gonna make the movie poster version of a bunch of different things that I like. I'm gonna do it in my style. So you go to their booth and it's like the whole booth is just a bunch of like cool movie posters of things they like done in exactly their style, their way. And like in the intersection of like the things people are familiar with like an original style from an artist that like, you know, they can see the sort of taste of the artist in it, and it's like it's familiar but it's different. Like that is like such a winning formula. And then it like leaves room for you to like insert your taste and like, experiment with your style and all kinds of things. So like if you wanted to make something that felt like it was like a product, like that sort of thing could be a path forward for it. And like you wouldn't need to do that forever. You can still do character designs every day and like come up with cool ideas. Like it's not. I'm just saying like if you want to make a full-time living as an artist with the same skills you have today, I think there's a way to do it. I think there's a strategy to do it.
No, I'm looking at this and I keep seeing a cliffside with clouds in the background.
Cliffside with clouds in the background. Yeah, I mean that's like, oh, she's pressed up against the edge of the cliff, and her dragon pet is helping her. And then you don't have to draw all the architecture.
Oh man, so this is actually like my first serious attempt at drawing a dragon. And
Oh,
I'm
yeah?
super happy with where it's going.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, it's nice, man. All right.
I think it's just 'cause I've drawn a cat before, and it's just like a cat with like dragony stuff on it.
I am going to log out because I've been streaming for almost 4 hours now, and so I'm gonna like take a break, and I'm gonna be back
Alrighty.
tomorrow for more studies, noon Eastern. Thanks everyone who showed up. Thanks for everybody who's like subbing. Like I didn't get into this with the expectation that I was going to get any subs, so it's like awesome to Dustin saying Oppenheimer. You want to do the fantasy anime version of Oppenheimer?
Oh, that'd be beautiful. Yeah, go for it, dude. Atomic bomb for the win.
Stop
I
it off.
only like sort of know what Oppenheimer is,
Alright,
but I feel like
alright.
that's not the point.
All right. Well, I'll see everybody tomorrow. Bye, stream.
Yeah.